Jones sydd yma ar yr ochr addysg y cyhoedd. Felly, awn ni ymlaen I ymddeiriadau. Apologies.
Ymddeiriadau gan y cynghorydd Bob Murray ac hefyd gan Prifweithredwr Judith Greenhalgh. Mae gen I gyfarfod pwysig bore yma ynglyn â Covid. Wedyn mae Alan Smith yma ar ei rhannu. Dyna'r ymddeiriadau dwi ddiol. Diolch yn fawr, Rhian. Dyna ni.
Cadeirydd, a diolch Geraint Davies, dio ddim yma heddiw, a yn anffodus di'w dad o ddim yn dda iawn. So mae Geraint I ffwrdd os yma.
O'n I wedi cael y wybodaeth, o'n i'n siŵr oedd eisiau ddeud o'n gyhoeddi. So na fo, diolch ti Hugh. A da ni'n meddwl am Geraint a'i dad yn y cyfnod anodd yma, ond dim Covid ydy'r broblem, ond rhywbeth arall. Diolch yn fawr iawn I ti Hugh. Dangos diddordeb, Declaration of Interest. Mae gen I un y sgwrs, dwi'n lywodraethwr Ysgol y Castell.
Yeah.
Ysgol Tîm over.
Diolch, Eli. Diolch yn fawr.
Chair, I need to declare two interests. One, I'm a governor at Ysgol Llys and Prestatyn, but two, I'm not sure what item it is, but my children use Welsh language. We use transport to Welsh language schools. So that's item 5 or 6, is it?
Oh, diolch
yn fawr.
Nes I edrych o hynny gyda ti yn diwedd. Ond o'n hwyr yn agor.
Mae Meirig yn siarad o draws pawb ar hyn o bryd. Diolch yn fawr.
2-8. 3-3. 2-8. 3-3.
Da ni'n clywed Meirig yn dweud rhifa allan. O, Hugh Irving.
Can I just interrupt and say Governor Prestatyn High School, please?
Anyone else? Neil Roberts?
Yeah, Governor of the Ysgol y Park in Denby.
Diolch yn fawr. Peter?
Governor at VP School St Asaph.
Diolch, Peter. Na ni, diolch yn fawr.
Cadeirydd, sori. Fel Paul Pennington 5 a 6, dwi'n lywodraethwr ag yn rhiant.
Diolch Hugh.
Thank you.
Matters at all, to my knowledge. Diolch yn fawr. Felly, minutes of the last meeting, minutes of the Performance Scrutiny Committee held on 1st October 2020 were submitted. Felly, ewn ni drwyddo nhw. Os gael hyd nhw. Dyma nhw. Right. Correction first, please, if you were willing to look through them. Number 5, COVID-19 recovery theme was the main thing we discussed. Da ni'n mynd ymlaen wan I dudalen 9, Corporate Risk Register Review, September 2020, Scrutiny Work Programme a Feedback Committee Representative. Oes rhywun yn cynnig bod nhw'n iawn, os gwelwch yn dda? Diolch Peter, na I eilio, felly, ydy pawb yn gytun bod nhw'n gywir I ddechrau? Diolch yn fawr. Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Nefyd gael neges gan Nicola, mae hi yma yn lle Geraint y bore hwn. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Arwel?
Arwel? Ie. Be ys I, Meirig?
Dwi yn lywodraethwr Ysgol Cymraeig. Datgan diddordeb.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch yn fawr, Meirig.
Arwel?
Pwy arall sy'n siarad?
David, fedrwch chi... Dwi wedi mynd o cyfarfod, do?
Da ni wedi cychwyn y cyfarfod, dwi'n clywed y lais di'n glir.
Ie, dwi'n gweld chi, ond ys dim... Da chi'n... Just I chi gael gwybod newydd wedi cyrraedd y cyfarfod, ie? Ond ys dim fideo ger fama.
Na fo. Diolch I ti, David.
Oce.
Diolch yn fawr.
Arwel, diolch yn fawr, dwi'n datgan diddordeb Llywodraethwr Ysgol Benhyfryd ac Ysgol Borthyn.
Diolch yn fawr iawn I ti am egluro hynna. Diolch yn fawr. Felly, da ni wedi cytuno bod nhw'n gywir, cyfarfod cyntaf, da ni wedi gyfarfod blwyddyn dwytha, ar y cyntaf o hydre. Felly, I mynd trwyddo nhw, oes na rhywbeth yn codi. Di distawrwydd mawr. Everyone is happy, I think. Diolch yn fawr. Felly, o'n i mlaen i'r nesa, sef cyfarfod gawson ni chydig cyn y Nadolig. Mi o hwn ar yr ail ar hugen o'r Rhagfyr, ac mi welwch chi nhw fanna, roedd Emrys Wyn yn cyflwyno problem efo plastics, reduction of plastics in Denbighshire County Council. Os oes rhywun yn fod nhw'n cynnig bod nhw'n gywir. Diolch Eli, diolch yn fawr, yna i eilio, they're correct, diolch yn fawr. Os yna rhywbeth mater yn codi o'r rhain, os gwelwch yn dda? Nag os dwi'n meddwl. Dwi'n gweld chi'n glir rwan, David.
Diolch, okay.
Da chdi, diolch yn fawr iawn ti.
Just one comment, Chair. Did
Yes.
it really only take half an hour?
Pardon?
Did it really only take half an hour?
Yes, it was a very, very
Brilliant.
quick meeting. Very quick meeting. It won't be like this today.
Oh, I hoped.
Emrys Wyn?
Yeah, dim ond y sydyn iawn. Yeah, single item agenda, so it was pretty quick. Ond gai just neud yn sydyn hefyd bod ni yn edrych ymlaen i weld byddwn ni'n gallu gobeithio datblygu trefn lle byddwn ni yn gallu mentora neu monitro, dyn ni ddeud, yr trefniadau gyda defnydd o blastig o fewn y sir dros cyfnod nesaf beth bynnag.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i ti. Diolch yn fawr. Felly, ewn ni mlaen nawr te i'r eitem nesaf, sef dyma fo, Work Programme Support to Schools During the COVID Pandemic. Nawr te, dwi'n mynd drosodd rwan at Hugh Hilditch Roberts, sydd yn gofal y Gymraeg ac yn gofal addysg trwy'r sir, a hefyd Nicholas Stubbins, sydd yma yn lle Geraint Davies, a gewch chi gyflwyno swyddogion gwe, Nicola a Hugh, os gwelwch yn dda. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi. A drosodd ta chi, Hugh.
Diolch yn fawr, bore da pawb. Good morning all. Normally, this is the time of year where we come and we present the GCSE and A-level results and what's happened the year before, and you give us a good old grilling on each performance of each school and high school and how we're doing. Unfortunately, in these strange, unique times, this is not the case. So what we bring before you really is a summary, really, of all the efforts that have been made to support learners to achieve their full potential during these really strange times, and trying to give you a flavour of how education and schools, especially, and children and parents have had to adapt to try and deliver the educational curriculum. So really, what I'm going to just canter through it, because obviously I know there's so much to read, but no doubt you've all read it. So basically what I want to just try and convey is that, you know, in these, and I would say if you ask any teacher, if you ask any educational officer, it is probably the most challenging times of their career. And that's why we've got Maya and Jackie from GWYR here to support Nicola and myself, because no doubt there will be questions thrown up that we probably can't answer. But in a quick canter, staff in local authorities and GWYR have had to really change the pattern and the way they work to provide an efficient service that supports the school community going forward during the pandemic. We've worked really close as 6 regions to ensure that we deliver a whole offer across the piece. And it has really refocused several times owing to, you know, the changes that have been made. And, you know, I might as well touch as well, when we're sitting here today, it's not just the changes that happen to the curriculum, it's the changes to transport, it's the changes to risk assessment, it's the changes to health and safety, it's the changes to catering, changes to cleaning. It's not just the educational delivery that's been shaken, if you like, it's actually the whole building school offer. We've supported senior leaders through the well-being and provided a series of workshops. And one of the major things we've done in Denbighshire is that Geraint has introduced a weekly video call, if you like, or a Zoom call for all heads, which has been really positive in sharing of information and updates, because as you all know, what tends to happen along this journey is that Welsh Government make an announcement, ask schools to do X, Y, and Z, and then 3 weeks later send the guidance. But it's already been implemented. So we're really playing catch up in a lot of all this. So we found that Geraint's weekly meetings or briefings have really made a difference to the schools. So we've been really careful that we're supporting the senior leaders. And as I said, we worked across North Wales with GWYR, and the regional approach has made a difference because we've had consistency right across. And I've also been involved in a lot of all North Wales heads meetings, which we see that coming through, which is very positive. The main areas we've looked, the requirements have been around, say, health and safety, site and facility manager, transport, staffing arrangement, blended teaching and learning, massive challenge to deliver that, because it can be delivered differently from each school, depending on how that teacher, to give you an example, you can have a primary school of 250 children with many teachers in that school, and therefore they're able to adapt to each year to be able to do a certain type of blended learning. But then you may have, 2 teachers in a school, and therefore they have to adapt to deliver it for the whole school. So you're not going to get the same blended learning in every school, but you are going to get, they are delivering it. And interestingly, inclusion and pupil support has been a massive thing for Denbighshire, where we've seen, the last figures I saw was that actually our referrals for children in Denbighshire are lower during COVID than that before. Because what we've seen is that our teachers are in touch on a regular basis, especially the vulnerable children, which have been contacted and kept in touch. We've sorted the free school meals out. So we're closer to our children in a challenging time, which we thought we would be the other way around, if that makes sense. So that's a real positive. So everything we have done is actually quite bespoke, because obviously, as I've just alluded to, that the different schools will have different things. We've also made sure that the schools that we had on our school causing concern list prior to COVID still had access to clear and targeted support to help them through a difficult period. And a lot of time and energy has been put into place to contact international experts and to research international practice to learn and establish the principles of effective distance and blended learning. So it's just not, we've done training, we've supported staff. We haven't just said, off you go, teachers, do some blended learning. We've given them the guidance and the support that they need to make sure that we deliver this. And obviously, not only are the schools delivering it, but GWYR are also evaluating what is being delivered, which is really important. So we've got almost an independent view of what we have. I mean, let's be honest, the school leaders and the heads will acknowledge this is the greatest challenge, to deliver blended learning at distance. We've got, I declared an interest, my son, he's got his lesson calls and he gets up in time, and it's quite impressive really to think, but this is happening, and they are delivering. And I'm speaking as a parent, I've had a report back from the school on his progress, so I still know that he is actually accessing and delivering his education. And having said that, we thought that maybe the parental engagement would have been more of a challenge, but it's been a key factor in securing effective distance blended learning. And maybe that is because parents are home more, and they've taken that burden on that, the school, that homeschooling is really important, and they've also probably taken a few glasses of wine along the way to help them get through it. But it is being delivered. So I think we need to acknowledge the parents on this. So in essence, we don't know what the future holds. And in my mind, I was thinking, potentially it could be 2023, whoever the next lead member of education is, the next administration, before they can come back to this committee and deliver you exam results. Because we don't know what that future is. We know that the teacher assessments will be done. We will be working already to find out and lobby what happens next year. and again, I don't mean to use my son as an example, but he's in year 10, so he'll be in year 11 next year. So what is his GCSE looking like? What will it be? So we could be a long way off, you know, coming back to deliver to you what we normally deliver, and that's just a sign of the challenging times. So, you know, all we can do is prioritise additional support for secondary schools in particular in preparation for the exam grades in 2021. That is a priority for us. We will continue to support schools with the cluster and the provision to meet any future lockdown scenarios, which who knows what happens. Any resources we can identify, we will support, and an improvement advisor from GWYR will support from the centre as well. And continually and daily identify, share best practice from blended learning, any resources we're sharing. And, you know, a question I have a lot is, well, have all the children got IT? As far as we are concerned, yes, they have, because if they contact the authority, we will support them. And really, really, really big thing for you counsellors when you're out there in the mix and people asking you questions is, if they got an Xbox or a PlayStation, they can access the Google apps, etc. They only need a keyboard to support that. So I think it's really important that you're aware of that out there. So you know, but having said that, the authority are aware that there's no iPad or laptop. We will support them through that. Everybody who's asked for one, we've helped. So just for you to know. I think that's about it in a nutshell. Unless Nicola or Mair or Jackie want to come in. But it's just really just an overview of what life is like back in schools, and how we are supporting them. But what I want to say is, from the bottom of my heart, the attitude and engagement of head teachers and staff in schools and education during this period, I would challenge. There's no better in Wales. I mean, you will have seen me come out before Christmas saying that I wanted children to remain in school because our stats supported that. In fact, before Christmas, if our children after Christmas, if our children had gone back, I think it was something like 98% of our children would have been in education on the first week of January going back. But our teachers have said simply, children come first, tell us what we need to do and we'll do it. And that has never, ever been a pushback from us here in Denbighshire. And I know other areas have had a lot of pushbacks, but I want to say a personal thank you to the school, to the staff, the heads, the cooks, the cleaners, everybody for what they're giving us here in Denbighshire, because our children are truly privileged to have that ethos. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Ydy rhywun arall fel Nicola eisiau deud gair, neu James Brown, ydy honna, yndi? Rhywun arall eisiau deud gair, neu aelodau o GWE eisiau deud gair, cyn bod ni'n mynd i aelodau'r Pwyllgor i ofyn cwestiwn. Na, dim y cwestiwn o gwbl.
Hi Arwel, sori, Mair yma o GWE.
Sut ydych chi?
Bore da, sut ydych chi gyd?
Iawn.
Diolch yn fawr iawn am gweld bod yma. Os di'n o'r reis efo chi, fysa ni'n licio Jackie a finna roi cyflwyniad byr i chi.
Iawn, iawn.
Just a short presentation from Jackie and myself. I'm just going to hand over to Jackie. Jackie's going to begin, if that's okay with everybody.
Iawn.
Okay,
Jackie.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Hugh has already taken a lot of our presentation for you, but articulated it very, very well. But we'd just like to kind of just to reiterate a lot of what Hugh has said, and just to talk through some of the documentation that's been presented with you. Prior to the meeting, you've been presented with a collection of documents, and we were going to summarise them as best we could during this session and respond to any questions that you may have that come from those documents. So you were given a performance scrutiny, which was a timed work that was undertaken so far, which was Appendix 2, and a report detailing the professional learning, which is like a pictorial representation of all the information that's been given to schools, which we've put together to support schools since the beginning in March. There was also a document which explains the resources which have been available to support schools as part of the accelerated skills provision. And then there's also the current offer of professional learning available to schools, which is Appendix 5.
So what we're hoping to do in this presentation, and we promise to be really brief, but we're just going to touch upon 3 aspects of the work that's been going on. So firstly, we're going to just talk a little bit about what our work programme has been and continues to be over the different phases of the COVID-19 period. Secondly, we'd like to discuss how schools have adapted to the new ways of working in response to the restrictions that have been placed upon them. And lastly, we want to just consider with you the impact of COVID on future educational delivery practices. So we all know that the pace of change at the moment is significant, and papers that we have put together for you just at the beginning of this term might now even start to appear to be out of date, especially as they refer to current work programmes which change incredibly quickly to be reactive. And this is reflective completely of how we as a service continue to adapt and be flexible to respond to the situations.
Okay, so if we start from during the period since March 2020 and through to this present time, 6 local authorities, as Hugh said, across the north have worked collaboratively with GYFER, supporting each other in various work streams. So we can provide consistency in message and a regional approach to all aspects of our work. Our close partnership, so GYFER's partnership with the Denbighshire local authority officers has been vital in support that we've been able to give, and we are continuing to give to schools at this time. So GWER and the local authority officers in Denbighshire have had to adapt their work in order to continue to provide effective services and support for all the schools and all their communities during the pandemic. And during this difficult period, we in GWER we try to keep true to our vision and values as an organisation, that is continually learning.
So as a service, GWER have had to refocus several times during this period to meet the needs of the range of stakeholders. The ability to be flexible and agile and to work effectively together in different teams, increasingly across sector, has had a significant impact on our organisational behaviour and external perceptions. At the heart of the refocusing has been the need to ensure the well-being of school leaders, the staff in schools and the learners and the parents, which has been paramount to any decision making that has taken place. And we've applied this to ensuring the right level of support, both operational and professional, has been directed accurately by us as a service. Regular contact with school leaders has been an important and large part of our work, and has been and continues to be well received. Head teachers feeling that they can turn to a professional colleague to share challenging issues and find solutions to address day-to-day issues has, I think, been invaluable.
So I'm not going to ask you to look at the documents now, because I'm sure that you've already had a browse through them, but in Appendix 1 of the documents that we shared with you, the first 3 phases indicate the work that we did with the Denbighshire schools during the first lockdown period from March. And this was very much and continues to be focused on the health and the well-being of staff and the pupils, supporting the schools to provide the hubs and to stay open for pupils of critical workers, whilst also supporting them with their distance learning for the pupils who are having to work from home. This also included very regular contact with the head teachers to ensure that they had the appropriate support to operate effectively, but also to act as a sounding board, to support their own well-being. Schools were also provided with a suite of resources, websites, reference points for all age groups that could be accessed quickly. They were given models of how distance learning could look, and these models were actually shared nationally as well when they were seen by Welsh Government. Guidance and support was given to schools regarding feedback to learners and training packages for schools on digital means to communication and to teach children. So these were provided and available to all schools. GWER school improvement advisors met with clusters of schools, individual schools and head teachers on a very regular basis to share updates and to provide opportunity to discuss lessons that have been learnt during that period.
Sorry, my computer was just trying to restart there, excuse me. So from June 29th onwards, when all pupils returned to school, we moved into what is termed phase 4 in the appendix document that you have. As well as working alongside Karen Evans and Geraint Davis and the whole team to ensure that risk assessments were in place, we continued to support schools through maintaining regular contact to support staff and learner wellbeing initially. We developed and published extensive guidance and models for blended learning approaches, and we had a single curriculum mindset informing all of this work, involving advice and guidance for face-to-face and distance learning. And around that, we provided a huge degree of professional learning in order to upskill teachers in this way of working. The local authority and GWYR together have also worked on issues that needed to be addressed around fitness of learners for learning in preparation for their full integration back into schools as planned for in September.
So phases 5 and 7 of the Appendix 1 details the next phase of our work, which was from September 2020 onwards. GWYR's approach was that schools are prepared to ensure learning for all pupils. Initially needed to focus on 3 interrelated components that would assess pupils' fitness for learning by first looking at their emotional and well-being, their emotional and mental well-being, by looking at their health and their physical fitness, and then looking at the core skills of numeracy, literacy, learning to lead, learning to learn, and independence skills. So depending on those assessment outcomes, 3 levels of support were offered to schools. So first of all, there was a universal offer, which had been available for all learners. Secondly, there was targeted support for those who've been identified as needing some initial support in any of those 3 areas. And then finally, the specialist or acute support that any identified pupils may need.
So just to touch on GWYR's work programme in the autumn term. So we used the phrase returning to the new normal an awful lot at the beginning of September. And we as a service, along with the LEA, had planned for what we had predicted would be happening. But as with all best laid plans, especially at the moment, our plans then had to be adapted again very significantly and very quickly. The first 2 items that you will see in your documentation detailing the work programmes are around regular contact with all head teachers and senior leadership teams. And we're discussing reflections and lessons learned from lockdown periods and scenario planning. These began as scheduled in September, and such meetings are ongoing in all manner of ways. However, with the immense pressure that schools and head teachers are under at the moment, the majority of the work programme is now in response to national requirements and schools' needs. And it can't be stressed enough just how much pressure schools are under to be continuously reactive and adaptive. So as well as being preoccupied by operational matters, head teachers are trying to get through each day by keeping everybody safe, responding to health and safety requirements, dealing with parental inquiries, keeping their schools open for pupils of critical workers and vulnerable children, while simultaneously ensuring that there is a continuation of progressive learning for all their pupils. That they really are, as Hugh has already said, doing an amazing job that really does need to be recognised. Because of the ongoing and ever-changing situation, our work has had to shift considerably to support head teachers and school staff in preparing for whichever scenario they might find themselves in. And in terms of scenarios, these have been and could be anything from the school being open to all staff working in school, all pupils in school, through to the school being closed to all, where all staff are working from home, perhaps some unable to work, and all learners accessing distance learning, and of course all the very various scenarios in between. The meetings with schools are ongoing in raising awareness of the new forward working plan, and during these meetings schools are familiarising themselves with support centre that GWYR has established. The feedback from Denbighshire schools, I have to say, is continually extremely positive about this support.
So in terms of support, a new Google Classroom has been created. This classroom can be used as a short-term emergency resource, but also as an example of how digital blended learning model could look as we move forward towards the new curriculum. So it's supporting them in moving forward as well. And it's very different to previous resources that we provided, as it's a model which a teacher can adapt using their old classroom based on blended learning rather than distance learning. And to support this learning, the 6 directors have sent a letter to all schools, letter signed by the Managing Director of GWYR as well, requesting that all schools support each other by sharing resources. And we've developed a place for them to share these resources, that teachers will be able to respond to different operational scenarios that they would find themselves in, as Maya's just mentioned. Clusters and alliances of schools are in the process of sharing resources, approaches and other forms of support. And it involves kind of looking at what they've already presented and already created, identifying any gaps and co-creating these additional resources to respond to these gaps. We've got a support centre where the teachers can go to find any of these resources they would find useful for them to help them in the scenarios that they're finding themselves in. And all schools have been given some funding to help them support them to get this support centre up and running as quickly as possible for all to use.
So I'm just going to touch very briefly on the content of the GWYR professional learning offer, which you have been sent already as Appendix 5. This year, of course, this is considerably reduced, but it covers the 5 key areas that schools need support for in response to various scenarios at the moment. So it includes the reform journey, developing the workforce, and this includes leadership at all levels, support for newly qualified teachers and for teaching assistants, support and training around digital capability and the accelerating learning programme. All other aspects of a school's usual work programme, such as discussion around school development planning, performance management and a school's self-evaluation processes and cycle, are only taking place at a time when the school is in the right place to do these things and are dependent on the situation and scenarios that they find themselves in. The focus at the moment continues to be keeping everyone safe, keeping schools open for those children who need to access the school, and ensuring that there is a true continuity of learning for all the learners. So as Jackie mentioned, we are also working with schools to ensure that the Accelerating Learning Grant is being used effectively. We've developed a series of resources and training opportunities that are available to all schools, and they will support them in those various areas that pupils need accelerated pace of learning. We've also worked closely with Bangor University to design strategies and support materials to be used in schools and at home with the support of parents. Our officers are liaising with schools regarding the Accelerated Learning Grants continuously and are signing off the plans once the schools have planned appropriate use of the grant.
Okay, so part of the initial question was how are schools responding to COVID? So there are a few bullet points, and they are continuing with in-school provision for pupils of critical workers and vulnerable pupils. They're providing both distance and blended learning to pupils. They're developing cluster work, sharing resources and approaches. They're involved in sharing best practice from one school to another, i.e. engaging with reluctant learners and families. They're looking at digital platforms and different communication systems. They're strengthening their use of IT. It's been a very, very steep learning curve for a lot of teachers in developing their use of IT so that they can still provide quality provision for pupils and to enable them to effectively communicate between themselves and within schools and with stakeholders. There is been an intensive programme of upskilling staff, which GWYR officers have provided when needed through the use of digital platforms for professional development, and they're still maintaining their own professional learning. There is a program of professional learning that's started this week for senior leaders and for senior leaders and head teachers, moving towards the new curriculum on change management and shared vision. So they are maintaining that, looking towards progress towards the implementation of the ALN reform and the new curriculum.
So finally from us, we need to now just respond to the request that you made for us to consider the impact of the disruptive COVID period on future educational delivery practice. And this falls into a couple of different areas really. In the short term, the impact of the rest of this academic year is likely to continue to be significant. And as a service, we will continue to proactively support schools' needs in a generic way with our general programme, but in a bespoke way by responding to every school's needs individually. We can only expect that learners are likely to be further affected by a continued lockdown, and I believe we're having an update tomorrow from the government about this. If distance learning therefore continues, as we expect it will have to, we will continue to work with schools to support their provision and to advise on how they can best accelerate learning. We'll continue to support and encourage cluster work and the sharing and collaborative work within the secondary sector we're calling alliance work. But we will ensure that learner and staff wellbeing needs are continuously a focus too. In terms of schools with learners in years 11, 12 and 13, obviously this is again a crucial time. We'll work with schools still to guide and to advise them with the centre determined grades, as the government are calling the outcomes that they wish to receive this year, which will replace the terminal exams. We're expecting a good deal more information regarding how they will work to come out over the next fortnight. And we will continue to guide and shape with schools how these centre determined grades are agreed, how they're moderated and verified. A vital consideration at the moment is the time scale around the information and around the grades. This is certainly going to be an all-absorbing agenda for secondary and through schools and school heads as we move forward. In terms of likely impacts that the pandemic will have on future learning practices, well, we talk about the new normal, and it's the case that there are many positives that have emerged from this period of time that will be built on in moving forward. So I could quote here things such as teachers improving their range of technological skills to enable effective digital learning, pupils' digital skills as well being improved, and also, in the very best instances, their independent learning skills. Homework is going to, I think, be completely reimagined because of the blended learning practices that have been used over these last few months. So much so that I think we're unlikely to see schools go back at all to the previous ways in which homework was organised. We've also seen a need for teachers to become increasingly more collaborative, and teachers, we are collaborative beasts at the best of times, but teachers have had to be extremely creative regarding planning, teaching, and feedback, and they're even better placed now for accelerated learning and learning at pace because of that. So we have the curriculum for Wales being introduced for the next couple of years. We're moving into a purpose-driven curriculum, as you know, but the way of working that we've been forced into over the COVID period will certainly be helpful with planning and implementing the new curriculum. Almost lastly, arguably during this period, wellbeing has become an even sharper focus for schools, and this agenda will certainly continue. So lastly, I think in terms of impact on future education practices, this period has necessarily provoked intense conversations around how qualifications are accredited, looking at not having that one big assessment at the end of a course, but rather incidental assessments from the school, more controlled by the school. And this is certainly going to accelerate the national discussion about how key outcomes are secured for our examination year groups. So just by finishing now, the positive comments that I'm making there about the impact on future educations are not intended to negate or ignore the potentially serious effects of this period of time. But the comments that I make there seek to show that we do have a forward-looking mindset, and that the resilience and the solutions-focused attitude that has been evident within the workforce of Denbighshire will certainly inspire the way ahead. So that's the end of the presentation from us. I'm so sorry if we've taken too much time.
I just would like to add one thing. Sorry, very, very sorry. If you would like to just take the opportunity in your own time to have a look through Appendix 2, it's a visual explanation of what's been available to schools through a digital process. There's an awful lot of work there, and I think visually it will show you what we have provided to schools. But also at this point, I would like to offer, if you would like to take up the offer at a later date, if you would like a more detailed explanation of those different aspects of the work. So thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i'r ddwy o'ch chi. Trylwyr iawn, arbennig. Diolch yn fawr iawn. A da chi hefyd yn heiddi diolchiadau am eich gwaith da chi'n neud yn y cefndir i gefnogi ysgolion. Cyn i ni mynd i gwestiynau, mae Hugh Hildred Roberts eisiau dod nôl at ni.
Diolch, Arfel. Sorry, something I really forgot to say was everything we just heard from Maya and Jackie and what I said before has actually been externally assessed by Estyn. You know, we were taking over the calls by Estyn before Christmas. We have had a positive, it's not like a normal inspection, but a positive letter back. And also Denbighshire is in the top 10 authorities in Wales for best practice. And I think that really is a real feather in the education and the schools team, CAP, and also other service who are supported as well across the council, transport, health and safety, catering, etc. And you know that I think I wrote to the leader and the chief exec and said, if that inspection or assessment from Estyn had been negative, that would have had real massive repercussions for the council. So that really is an achievement in itself by the team. So again, just I wanted to share. I don't know why I forgot to tell you that. Sorry, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i Hugh.
Arwel, fydra i dweud rhywbeth?
Gei di ofyn y cwestiwn pan dda'i'n deitha chdi. All right?
We should go in question. Okay.
Mi gei di ofyn cwestiwn, da ni yn gwybod mae'r rôl yn dangos ar y papur, mae'r enw di lawr. Diolch.
Iawn, oce.
Diolch i ti, Hugh, am hynna. Dyna un cwestiwn o'n i'n mynd i ofyn beth oedd cyfraniad Estyn tuag at cadw golwg ar bob sir. Felly, does dim rhaid i mi ofyn y cwestiwn yna rwan. A dwi'n mynd rwan at aelod sy'n cynrychioli Dinbych ucha, sef Geraint Williams i ofyn cwestiwn, os gwelwch yn dda.
Thank you, Mr. Cadeirydd. Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd just like to echo what Hugh said in his initial conversation in regards to thanking everybody from the school cleaner right the way up to the ministers, basically, for the support that they've given, and also for pupils to engage. It's obviously not been an easy time for them to engage as well, and I'd like to thank everybody. Maive did touch on my question, and it was basically, did they see things, unfortunately, because of the way things have developed this last 12 months, could they see things not going back to normal in the future? And Maive did touch on it, so it was more or less covered in it. But yeah, thank you very much for that. And it was good to see that some positives may come out of this last 12 months. So thank you, Chair.
Cytuno'n llwyr at ti, Geraint. Diolch yn fawr. Rwan ta David Williams, dyma dy gyfle di, sy'n cynrychioli dy serth. You're on mute, I think. Ti'n iawn? Fi'n gweld y wynebu.
Munud, can you hear me now? Ydych chi'n clywed fi rwan?
Clywed ti?
Ydych chi'n clywed fi rwan?
Mlaen ar cwestiwn.
Okay, Hugh, diolch yn fawr, Mr. Cadeirydd. Hugh, I know you've paid tribute to everyone, all your staff, and rightly so, but I think you as well deserve a special mention because you've been thrown in, by God, at the deep end, and you know, you haven't had it easy. You've, for various reasons, it's been a difficult situation for you anyway, and with the COVID, I think you've done a remarkable job, Hugh, as well as all your staff. So well done, and you owe me a pint when I see you next year.
Diolch, David. Os welwn ni'n gilydd eto, mi'n siŵr na i brynu peint i Hugh hefyd. Da iawn, David. Diolch yn fawr i ti fyna. Ti'n heiddio Hugh Hildish arbennig. Ni mlaen nawr at is-gadeirydd y pwyllgor hwn, cynghorydd Hugh Irving.
Good morning, everybody. Bore da. I'd like to expand on one area of all the work that's gone on. I don't want to repeat everything that's being said, but I'd like to ask a little bit of clarification, please, on how, because of the distance learning that we've done so well in developing over the last year, and the very strong possibility it's going on for some significant time, how are we assisting families who are unable to provide adequate devices themselves? I'd like to know something about multi-family issues, whether within one household with children, perhaps some primary, some secondary, trying to share devices, which affects signal strength if there's too much going on in a household. And I'm wondering, are there any charitable organisations that the county or the Welsh government taps into to provide resources? So that's the sort of three areas I'd like some expansion on, please.
Yeah, diolch, Hugh. Well, as I said in my opening gambit, basically, anybody who has any issues are to contact the school in the first instance, and if the school don't have a resource, we then, at county level, will address it. And that doesn't necessarily mean if there's 4 children in the house and they've got one iPad, we will still support them if they need multiple devices. And that's what I said, finding out, you can buy a keyboard for as much as £3 and fit it to the Xbox and the PlayStation, and you can run the whole thing through there. The biggest challenge is what we can't address as a local authority is if they have connection issues, because that's beyond our control. But I am not aware, and if there is anybody who needs that support and they haven't had, you must let me know, because we will endeavour to make sure that they are absolutely sorted. So we haven't got, I don't believe, anybody without a device at this moment in time. But if there is and you need it, just let us know and we'll get it sorted. We have computers and keyboards in County Hall that are outdated, if you like, but are still able to use, and we're happy to share. So we do not want any child going without.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. One aspect of it that's occurred to me, that if a household was having a signal issue and they're reduced to relying on, shall we say, smartphones, if that's the right word, that are running on the telephone data, they're going to very quickly burn up their existing allowances. And that's a very expensive proposition to have hanging on over your head. So I'm just hoping that the individual schools are keeping an eye on their pupils, which I suppose this is a welfare matter, to make sure there are adequate devices, that they are connected to the education system in a manner that they can afford, and we're keeping on in touch with that. Because our charities will help provide a stock of laptops or refurbished laptops. The Welsh government feel they have to operate with that field, or whether they've got adequate stocks themselves. So that'd be something else I'd like to hear from, perhaps from the GWAI officials, if they got the information. Thank you.
Hugh, can I just say, want to give you reassurance, is that you will not believe how close to our children we are from such a far distance, if that makes sense, because that has demonstrated in the referrals being lower during COVID to children's services than previous. each school has identified those children, whether they're vulnerable, whether they have issues with connections or computers or whatever, and they are tailoring the education offer to meet their needs. And that's really important. This is the extent of the work. And this is why the attitude of our teachers is really important when they say, doesn't matter what the scenario is, we'll do it. Just tell us what we have to do. And that's the attitude that's been throughout this. So I am not aware. I've been contacted once throughout the COVID by one parent about an IT issue. It was dealt with and solved the next day. The biggest issue I've got as a parent is my electric bill. I'm serious. It's gone up nearly £25 a week with a smart meter. So you know that the kids' data is not a problem in my house. It's the electric bill. So they're going to have different challenges, but we will do everything we can. If there are issues with devices, you have to let us know, and we will support that.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn. Un neges bach neis y fama, na'r un a gwpl sy'n dipyn oed yn hun y fi yn Rhydlan, yn dod atai a'n gofyn os nhw'n gallu prynu iPad i deulu sydd yn blodaidd, ac mae wedi cael ei dderbyn a dwi'n mynd efo i'r ysgol leol. Mae yna bobl dda yn dal i fyw yn y gymuned, a dwi'n falch iawn am yr ateb roi ysdi fanna Hugh, ardderchog. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Dwi'n mlaen rwan at cynghorydd arall sydd yn cynrychioli rhan o Prestatyn, Paul Penlington.
Thank you, Chair Barra. I'd like to ask a question of Hugh, I think, probably more than Gwere, although I do appreciate Gwere done an awful lot of work. I'm a teacher myself, I should say that, and I have many, many friends who are teachers, obviously. There's a lot of talk about how the children are faring, which is great. And they are doing well. My son's doing quite well online, all the rest of it. I don't think I've heard much about the well-being of the education staff. There was a report from government the other day that said teachers are no more at risk of contracting COVID than anybody else. However, that's just teachers. If you look at all the people who work in schools, teaching assistants, cleaners, catering staff and whatever, they're actually 4 times higher at contracting COVID than the general population. They're not far behind health and care workers, to be honest. I'm wondering, I mean, I count as a key worker as a teacher, but I'm working from home, so I'm not a massive risk. But there are still a lot of people actually in schools working with key workers and children with educational needs and such like. Do Denbighshire consider these staff to be critical or key workers, and will they be put in line for a vaccination? I'm not sure if I'm correct on this, but I understand that vaccinations will be given to education staff according to whether the local authority thinks they should or not. So what are we doing about vaccinating education staff still at work right now? Thank you.
Dear Paul, you know, in our teaching community, we've got 2,500 staff involved in that in that world, and that includes cleaners, caretakers, support staff, etc. We have been fortunate is that our COVID numbers of our staff have been very low. I think the last figures I looked at, I think we had 7 tested positive at the beginning of January out of 2,500 at that time. So, you know, that is always being monitored. The well-being of our teachers is paramount, and this is why we've introduced the weekly meeting for GYNRYCHIOLWYR, which is about support, not just about supporting the children, but about supporting the well-being of the staff. We have seen examples where staff have come back after the first lockdown with massive confidence, but also as the second strain virus has hit, has actually knocked their confidence. So, you know, we are supporting them. We're putting OcuHealth in place for some if they are nervous, and we are monitoring that. As for the vaccination, well, I think Nicola's here. That actually, my belief is that it's actually a Welsh Government decision, not a local authority decision. And I'm going to check that with Nicola, because that's what I believe in. Reading Public Health Wales, that's how it comes over.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn fawr, Hugh. Mae Nicola eisiau dod mewn efo hynna, os ti'n mynd i torri'r drais. Nicola, da chi eisiau siarad nawr? Diolch yn fawr.
Yes, can you hear me, Chair?
I can.
Yeah, excellent. The prioritisation of the rollout of the vaccine across all 4 nations in the UK has been determined by the Joint Committee for Vaccinations and Immunisations. It's not a priority list that the local authority or any employer within any of the 4 nations are able to influence. In terms of the current prioritisation, which is frontline health and social care workers, that does include those working in special schools that deliver intimate personal care to children. However, it does not cover any other frontline social worker within a school setting. So we will continue to provide our employees, including those working in schools, in whatever type of employment within a school setting, with the most up-to-date information as we receive it from Welsh Government Public Health Wales. But that is the situation across the whole of the UK. All 4 nations are signed up to that prioritisation.
Thank you.
Diolch, Nicola. Paul, do you want to come back on this, Paul Pendleton?
Only to express that, I mean, it's great. I think Derbyshire are doing a good job, to be honest. But I do think teacher morale is much lower than this meeting would have you believe. Teachers, not all teachers obviously, but many teachers are actually terrified of going into school at the moment, and teaching assistants and catering workers and all the rest of it, because we know that young people are more likely to carry COVID and not realise it and pass it on. But obviously that's beyond us at the moment. That's a Welsh Government or a Westminster Government decision, but thanks for that.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Paul. Da ni'n symud mlaen nawr I cynghorydd Martin Holland sy'n cynrychioli Llanarmon yn Ial ar ardal yna. Diolch yn fawr, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a general question first and foremost about the support for parents. As we all know, you know, if you've been a school governor, if you're in education, you know that some parents are able to support their children through education by encouraging them to read and all these sorts of things, and those parents will adapt to this situation. We also know that there are some parents who struggle to support their children through those scenarios. Can I ask how are we identifying those people? And then supporting them. That's the first question. I have quite a few concerns, not so much about the report, but some questions of clarification in the whole of the report, because I did go through it. And perhaps subsequent questions are, could you just clarify what CABAN is in 416, please? What do we mean by multidisciplinary units? That's in the report. Also, what is a triangle of need? That's in the report. And what do we mean by repurposing of schools? That's in the report. Mixed economy of provision is in the report. Just wonder what that is. And also self-regulation zones in primary settings. I wonder if you don't want to clarify them all today, if somebody could drop me an email just to say what that all means, that would be marvellous. And I did actually go to my Oxford English Dictionary to find out what pedagogy was. And it's nice to understand that it's the science of teaching. Thank you very much.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Martin. There's a few other questions I was going to ask if somebody else. Da iawn, Martin. Pwy sy'n ymateb hwnna? Mair?
More than happy to try. It's difficult. It's a little bit difficult without contextualization with some of the phrases, but I'll say what I can, and then I'll hand over to Jackie. I'm sure she'll be able to fill in. CABAN is the initial teacher training provision, which is a collaboration between Bangor University and Chester University to provide a new programme of initial teacher education. And GWYR works closely with CABAN and fully supports and works with that provision, which, you know, as I'm sure you'll agree, is a very important thing for us to encourage and to keep growing, especially with Welsh language provision and in our area. In terms of multidisciplinary units, I think without seeing the contextualisation of that phrase, I think we will have used it to refer to our provision of models of work, schemes of learning that encourage teachers to plan across different subject areas. So perhaps a unit of work that we will have prepared suitable for Key Stage 3 use in a blended learning environment. As I said before, this idea of the single curriculum mindset, so what the children would be covering in school and what they're covering at home would have a synthesis. There wouldn't be a stop and start because of lockdown, return. And the multidisciplinary units would have elements, for example, perhaps of geography, literacy, numeracy, science, rather than be just subject specific. The triangle of need, I really think I'd need a contextualisation to give you an answer that would be useful with that. The repurposing of schools, I think I'll have to refer to somebody else for that as well, because I imagine that refers to the hub and the the hub provision that the county has been doing. Mixed economy of provision. I can understand too that sounds jargonistic in a way, but again, I think that will be referring to the fact that one size does not fit all in terms of actually what we would be suggesting that teachers teach to children, and especially how it is taught. You will find that there is an array of different approaches to teaching at the moment, which includes synchronous and asynchronous. You've got your live lessons, you've got your pre-recorded lessons, you've got your recorded over PowerPoints, you've got your paper packs. There's a huge array of things going on. And self-regulation zones, I'll have to hand over to Jackie for that one.
Sorry, I don't know whether I'm going to be very much more and give you any more detail of that, because I didn't jot down the words that you asked. I can expand on mine, but I don't really think that I need to expand on them. If you happily put those into the chat, and then I can look at the words. I've got quite a poor signal here, and it keeps dropping in and out, so I'm only picking up elements of what people are saying. So I'm quite happy to, if you put those into the chat, and I'll come back with you about the definitions. I'm very aware that at the moment there is an awful lot of educational jargon going on, and it's you need almost a separate dictionary to work it out. And even people in education, I think, need a little bit of struggling. So I do apologise if there's if the report does contain a lot of jargon that's not very self-explanatory. But I will come back to you on that if you could just put those into.
Can I just say, obviously, we're all lay people, and from different backgrounds, and jargon doesn't help. And members will know of the committees that I'm one that always picks up on the jargon, because it is a lot easier for us. Some of those, because initially when I looked at blended learning, I thought, what the heck is that? But I could actually go down somewhere in that document, 185 pages worth, and find a button that you could press on and work that one out. So I do understand what that is. But going back to my first point, though, is the support for those parents. This is difficult times, and I really do understand the pressure that everybody's under, and I'm very grateful for the work that everybody is doing. But there are some parents who are struggling. And I remember in the first lockdown talking to somebody in my village saying, aren't we lucky that we live in a beautiful part of the world? I can walk out my door quietly on my own and go for a walk, 5-minute walk or whatever, and come back. And I thought about those parents who live on the 16th floor of a multi-story block of flats in the centre of Birmingham with 3 or 4 children, and how they were coping. And that is the difficulty now with this. Yes, it's a nice way forward, using technology in these circumstances, but not everybody can do that, and some parents will need support. So how are we identifying those people?
Schools teachers have been having very regular contact with the children when they've been at home, and any pupils that they're not having regular contact with, then they're phoning and talking to the parents. They are continually offering their support to parents, because they're very aware that there are some parents out there who don't have the ability to maybe help their children along the way, especially the older they get. The younger ones tend to have better support than the older ones, but teachers do phone often, at least once a week, to support parents. And what they've moved into now as part of their distance learning and their blended learning is they've started introducing videos, so parents can hear the teachers talking to the children, explaining what they need to do. So that's a better way of introducing it. But of course, this is only useful if the parents or the children are actually engaging. And what's happening is that the engagement is really high in most schools. A very small percentage of pupils in primary are not engaging, and those who are not engaging are getting things via paper, and then the teacher will phone up to explain to the parents, you know, what they need to do, and offer them the support that way.
Diolch yn fawr, Jackie.
It's
Thank
important
you.
nobody falls
We need to
behind.
move on. Thank you. With other people I want to ask questions.
Can I just hold you down, Cadeirydd, just a bit sylw?
Gai James Brown i mewn gyntaf, mae wedi gofyn o'r ymlaen di Hugh, sorry. James Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I would explain about the repurposing of schools. This was referring to the first lockdown when the schools were closed and they were then reopened as childcare hubs rather than delivering education. And there's a distinct difference between childcare and education provision. I hope that helps, Chair.
Can I ask you a question then, James? I've got a school in the local area where I live. They had it closed for a week. And it was a hub. It is a hub school, I think, but there are essential workers who have children in the school. Were the children allowed to go to another school?
No, Arwel.
That was a very difficult situation this time. I know the school you're referring to, and the decision by Environmental Health to remove almost all of the staff from the school. The school opens again tomorrow, I think, so it was a 4-day closure that the head had to take because she had no staff to run the school. The problem with moving children to another school, as I'm sure you can understand, is that those children then mix in other bubbles. And therefore, if there was an issue, we have potential transmission of an infection to another school and then back again.
Diolch I ti, James, dwi'n deall yna, ond mi oedd yna rieni yn cysylltu fo fi eisiau gwybod beth oedd y sefyllfa. Ti eisiau dod nôl ar hwnna?
Yeah, please, I just want to come back just on Martin. Jackie's covered the support, but one area that we have identified as being quite challenged during this time is for Welsh-speaking children who are in Category 1 education, but don't have Welsh-speaking parents. So we've identified that, and the schools are working alongside and adding extra support in there. And we know in some schools even parents are supporting parents because with homework and etc. But I think the committee need to understand is children are physically having Zoom live lessons like we are now. And I was told of one boy last week who for the last 3 weeks has found out that he has the ability to change the name on the Zoom, and he had his name and changed to reconnecting, so he never got asked a question by the teacher. So there's some creative people out there. So it is happening. It is live, and I witnessed my son having them, and the teachers are answering questions as on the go, if you like, as they would in a classroom, just to give you some reassurance.
Diolch yn fawr, Hugh, ac yn ymlaen wan i aelod sydd ddim yn gynghorydd, Kathleen Jones. Cyfle I chi rwan ofyn cwestiwn.
I'm quite concerned that every time I hear about learning, everything revolves around digital learning, and I can understand that that's really important. It's really important that families have a computer. I'm wondering how much work's been done to support parents, where when that computer is being used by one member of the family, the others could perhaps quite legitimately be making models or working with Play-Doh or construction, and they're all learning, and how much work is being put to help the parents use the things that they've got at home to be able to engage children, so that there's not this big scramble and everybody working on digital activities. there doesn't seem to be anything to say that. And some parents might not be able to afford these, but other people, like they could give their laptops, might be able to offer some packs of Play-Doh or some material or some cardboard or some activities and activity packs. And it's just a way of supporting parents to be able to get over this only having one laptop, which we hear all the time. There's more to learning, and I understand it's important, but parents need to not be pressured into thinking that everybody can only learn if they're on a computer. Thank you.
Catherine, thank
Da
you.
iawn, Hugh, beth am wneud am hynna?
Yeah, no, I think your point, but I think people are getting maybe the wrong message when we're saying digital learning. That the computer is access to communicate with the pupil, which is very different. So, for example, let me give you a task that my daughter had, which was she had to be creative around numbers using things in the autumn from outside, yeah, like leaves and stuff, and not right numbers. Another thing I've seen is collect different shaped stones for a 3 or 4-year-old to do, put numbers on them so they learn the counting, video it, and send it back to your teacher. So there are outdoors activities with sand, for example, with craft. The computer is not necessarily just the learning; it's the setting of tasks and work for the child to report back. So there is a lot of that going on.
Hugh, I totally understand all of that, but I'm just thinking some parents might need help with the provision of things like Play-Doh or construction. People can help other people by providing these materials. That's all I was thinking. If we've got to be pushed on providing digital things, shouldn't we also be looking just through the media, even from the council, saying these are other ways that you can help your child while they're waiting for their turn on the computer. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, fair point. We can put that into
Mae Mair eisiau yn ôl ar hynna.
Thanks, Adrian. I was just going to add, completely agree. There are so many different means by which children need to learn now, and perhaps we overemphasize the communicating of information around digital because that has been the greatest challenge in order to go from something that was used incidentally and by choice to something that is forming, certainly in the secondary sector, a significant part of how learning is happening. But you're quite right, one of the main things we've done is supported through our guidance on the planning, real time being taken on the planning for the purpose of the learning that's being provided, so that all the learning is purposeful. And I know, Jackie will be able to tell you more should you need, but I know the primary schools have been incredibly reactive to this as well by putting together packs of resources for parents to use at home, so that learning can be non-digital, as indeed it still needs to be as well.
Diolch yn fawr. Mae amser yn mynd a mae gennym ni eitem arall i drafod yn y dyfodol. Diolch i chi Mair a diolch i chi Kathleen. Dwi'n mynd ar y cynghorydd Andrew Thomas yn awr sydd yn cynrychioli ardal yn Llanelwy.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, my questions are very much of a general nature, so they're not specific. I think I'll send an email to Hugh and ask for some responses. I couldn't understand what GWE was, for instance. I know what it does, but what it does, I don't know where it's going in the future and things like that. And I would concur that there's so much words and so much blarney comes out of it, and statements that are made that should be perfectly obvious, such as I cite 417, the next steps. I would have thought it was perfectly obvious, those next steps, and they didn't need to be spelt out. And it's a pity that they have to be spelt out. And added to that, there are no sort of measures as to how you measure performance. So really, it's a lot of words to say very little at the end. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch i chi, Andrew. A da ni'n mynd rwan i gynrychiolydd o Ardal y Rhyl, y cynghorydd Eli Chard.
Thank you, Arwel, and nice seeing everybody this fine day. My question is to the GWE ladies, Jackie and Mair. Sharing resources, a support centre. Is it a physical building or is it a virtual? I just wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Take this on, Maya. Ellie, I think that if you do take some time to look at the Appendix 2,
yeah,
there's a good example of what the support centre is. It's not a physical building. It is a virtual centre, whereby there's a lot of information which might also help answer Kathleen's question as well about the support that is given to the kind of support and the style of the support that's given to all the home learning, so to the parents and to the pupils. The information is within that support centre.
Great, thank you. And that's a good overall answer. Thank you very much.
It's the one-stop shop for all of the resources.
Brilliant. Okay.
Wel, diolch yn fawr. Mae aelodau o'r Pwyllgor I gyd wedi cael cyfle. A rwan rwy'n mynd ar 2 aelod sydd tu allan i'r Pwyllgor. A da ni am gychwyn efo'r cynghorydd Emrys Wyn sy'n cynrychioli Rhuthun, wrth gwrs.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd, a gael hefyd ategu'r holl ddiolchiadau sydd wedi cael ei gwneud y bore yma. Dwi'n mynd syth i'r cwestiwn. Mae gen i 2 gwestiwn. Dwi'n gobeithio bod yn iawn gyda chi, Cadeirydd. Na I ddarllen nhw fel maen nhw gennau. Da ni wedi eisoes wedi clywed. Da ni'n gwybod bod athrawon staff ysgolion yn arbenigwyr ar losgi'r ganwyll yn y 2 ben, os ydych chi ac yn gwybod wedi hen arfer gorfod paratoi ar gyfer yr wythnos y blaenau nhw, diwrnod y blaenau weithiau pan mae pethau newid ar fydd y byd. A dyna lle mae'r cwestiwn cyntaf dod ohono fo. Ydy'r awdurdod addysg lleol a GWE yn herio'r Llywodraeth pan fydd yn cyhoeddi newid gyda fawr ddim rhybydd? Enghraifft, cofiaf un cyhoeddiad yn cael ei wneud a oedd yn golygu bod gofyn I staff yr ysgolion, staff addysgu'r ysgolion, dreulio penwythnos yn yr ysgol, yn eu hysgolion, ar mwyn darparu ar gyfer y dydd Llun canlynol. Ydy math yna y sefyllfa'n cael ei herio oddi wrth GWE ac oddi wrth awdurdod lleol pan fydd yn digwydd. Dwi'n gobeithio bod yr ateb yn mynd yn gadarnhaol. A'r ail gwestiwn ydyn, a mae Huw eisoes wedi ymylu â hwn, ond dydym cweit yn dod i'r un maes am lle Huw o ran y Gymraeg. Oes arolwg wedi cael ei wneud o'r ddarpariaeth ar gyfer rhieni di-Gymraeg I fedru cynorthwyo plant, ac hefyd I ddarparu cyfleoedd i'w plant I glywed a chael defnyddio'r Gymraeg yn eu cartre. A di hwnnw ddim yn gwestiwn sydd ar gyfer sydd yn ysgolion Cymraeg, categori 1, bydd hwn yn gwestiwn ar gyfer bob ysgol gynradd ac uwchradd I raddau, ond cynradd y sicr yn y sir, lle mae rhaid iddyn nhw ddarparu gyfer y Gymraeg. Efo plant mewn ysgolion di-Gymraeg, mae'r unig gyswllt maen nhw'n cael ar y Gymraeg yn aml iawn ydy yn yr ysgol. Efo'r ysgol Gymraeg, pan mae'n agor, mae'n gyswllt am yr oriau'r ysgol, plus be mae'r cartre'n gallu gynnig. Ond mae'n wahaniaeth mawr. Mae'r cyswllt yma'n bwysig. Mae cyfleoedd i'r plant I fedru defnyddio a chlywed y Gymraeg. Pa waith ydyn nhw'n ail iaith neu iaith gyntaf. Diolch yn fawr.
Na fe, diolch yn fawr. Gan chrio ni efo Huw Hilditch ateb y cwestiwn yna. Diolch.
I gymryd y cwestiwn cyntaf. Dwi'n meddwl trwy hwn I gyd, dwi wedi bod yn reit fatha outspoken am y Llywodraeth, y ffordd maen nhw yn cyhoeddi newidiadau. Dyn nhw ddim yn rhoi manylion I ni sydd bin. Maen nhw'n disgwyl I ni, maen ambell I sefyllfa, dwi'n mynd I roi sefyllfa yn y ha, lle yn mis Gorffennaf, maen nhw ddeud bod be oedd y cludiant mwyn ysgolion yn mynd I fod, ond ddim manylion, ac ar ei hengydd allan rhyw fis wedyn. So, oedd rhaid I ni fel sir, wneud y manylion yn hunain I ddall be oedd y dathlyns I weithredu. So, dwi gweld a ni gymryd penderfyniad yn ystod cyn i'r ysgolion mynd yn ôl yn mis Ionawr, ar ei ni benderfynu ddim agor yn Sir Dinbych tan y 11th, dwi'n meddwl oedd o. Oherwydd, oedd rhaid o'n bwysig bod ni'n rhoi digon amser i'r rhieni a hefyd i'r athrawon baratoi a gallu gweithredu'n iawn. A dyna beth yn bwysig. A dyna wedi gweithio'n andros o agos ar y cyd efo Arwyn yn GWE a pob sir arall yn y gogledd. oherwydd dyn ni wedi sgwennu at Kirsty Williams ar ambell i bwnc, ambell i fater ar y cyd, oherwydd bod ni ddim yn meddwl bod nhw'n rhoi digon o tegwch i'r athrawon yn yr ysgolion. So, dyn ni'n herio yn aml iawn, a mae rhywbeth mae dal i gytuno, a'r her mwyaf ni wan Emrys ydy cael dealltwriaeth o be fydd yr aroliadau flwyddyn nesaf. Dyna ydy'r cwestiwn mawr. Be mae'r athrawon yma yn dysgu i mwyn asesu yn y dyfodol. So hwnna ydy'r her nesaf sydd ar y gweith.
Just ar gynffon hwnna, ydy'r Llywodraeth yn gwrando ar y heriau?
O, falle maen nhw'n clywed o, ddim falle maen nhw'n gwrando, dwi'n gwybod. Ond, i ddweud gwir, mae Llywodraeth wedi gwrando o ran asesu aroliadau flwyddyn yma, yn lle bod ni'n mynd ar algorithm neu rhywbeth arall. So maen nhw yn nôl i teacher assessment sydd yn bwysig. So mae yna elfen o bethau maen nhw yn gwrando, ond pwy bys eisiau fod yn Kirsty Williams ar y funud hefyd? Oherwydd mae pethau yn newid mor gyflym. A weithiau mae arweiniaeth cadarn gan Kirsty ddim yn cael ei gefnogi gen ei swyddogion efo'r manylion. A dyna beth sydd yn gap i fi yn y hwn. So mae wedi gwrando'n ambell i le, ddim yn pob lle, ond dyn ni'n dal i siarad. Dwi wedi bod ar Zooms efo, mae'n agored i ni i gymryd opinions ni ymlaen, so dwi'n gobeithio nawn ni ar y cyd, nawn ni gyrraedd yn lle iawn.
Gwe?
Rwan ni ateb ynghylch darpariaeth trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg i bob ysgol, categori 5 i categori 1.
Wel, na i ddod i fewn yn gyntaf, a wedyn siw bydd Mair eisiau dweud rhywbeth. Yn amlwg, mae y cysylltiad mewn ysgol, maen nhw'n mynd i gael plant yn mynd i gael mwy o Gymraeg bod yn yr ysgol, dydy. Mae hwnna yn ffaith, bydd ni byth yn digidol gallu matcho hwnna. Mae pob ysgol dal i weithio ar y curriculum, a mae Gymraeg yn rhan o hynny, a bydd nhw yn gwneud tasgiau Cymraeg yn digidol ac yn dysgu gwersi digidol yn y Gymraeg rhyw fath. Dwi'n gwybod bod rhai ysgolion ar y cyd efo'r rhieni yn cael cyfarfod Zoom, mae'r rhieni yn dod o'r plant i fewn i siarad hefyd. So mae'r plant yn cymysgu efo'i gilydd oherwydd bod nhw ddim yn gweld i gilydd. A wedyn maen nhw'n defnyddio'r iaith yn fanau i siarad ar hynny. Dwi'n meddwl bod hwn un o'r heriau mwyaf yn y sefyllfa yma, Emrys. A dyn ni wedi edrych, mae'n un ysgol yn Sir Ddinbych wedi cael ei effeithio mwy yn eraill. Dwi'n sôn am categori 1 wan, ia? A dyn ni yn rhoi gwaith chwanegol i mewn i'r ysgol neu gefnogi'r rhieni, a hefyd dyn ni yn gweithio efo pobl fel cilch wan hefyd, cos mae hwnna'n effaith mawr, cos does ddim cilch ar y funud. A mae hwnna yn beryg i'r Gymraeg yn y marn ni, oherwydd dyna lle maen nhw'n ifanc ac yn fuan ynddo. So mae yna gwaith yn mynd on, os o ddim ymchwil di bod, oherwydd y bwriad i bawb yma, dyn ni eisiau plant yn ôl yn ysgol ar y funud. Ond dyn ni yn gwybod lle mae'r wendidau a dyn ni yn cydweithio ar hyn ar y funud. Dwi'n meddwl os mae Mair eisiau dod i fewn, dwi'n siŵr.
Ddwy fewn yn fyr, ond cytuno efo pob peth ti'n dweud, Huw, mae yna darn o waith i wneud yn symud ymlaen i edrych ar yr effaith ar y Cymraeg, ac fel da chi'n dweud, ar plant sydd yn addysg Cymraeg ond o cartrefi ddi-Cymraeg. Mae yna lot o gefnogaeth yn mynd ymlaen hefo ysgolion trwy'r clwstwra i adnabod y plant a'r teuluoedd sydd angen cefnogaeth ac angen rhyw fath o darpariaeth mwy creadigol o gwmpas ychwanegu at yr addysg yn Cymraeg. Mae yna lot o adnoddau yn cael eu rhannu, mae yna lot o darpariaeth unigol yn digwydd. A dwi'n meddwl un o'r effeithiau positif eto ydy, fel ni'n deud o blaen amdano y cydweithio sydd yn digwydd. Lot o bethau creadigol yn mynd ymlaen o ysgolion Cymraeg i sicrhau fod fel enghraifft mewn ysgolion cynradd, mae yna athrawon yn darllen ar draws y sgrin storïau Cymraeg i'r plant medru gwrando a clywed y Cymraeg yn y tŷ. Ond ia, mae hwn yn blaenoriaeth i gwe, blaenoriaeth i pob awdurdod yn sicr, ac yna jobyn o waith i wneud hefo pontio yn symud ymlaen hefyd efo hwn.
Mae'n mateb o'n brawd a cadeirydd. Diolch yn fawr. Gawn ni'r arolwg os gwelwch yn dda.
Mae'n bach yn ormod wan, da ni'r rhedeg yn hwyr, a mae yna un person arall eisiau gofyn cwestiwn. Cynghorydd Mary Lloyd Davies.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Mr Cadeirydd, reit sydyn. Diolch i bob athro threswm ag i'r gweithlu i gyd yn ategu hynny. Mynd at y geiriau jargon yma, dwi wedi synnu nad oedd arbenigwyr ddim yn gallu dall rai o'n nhw, felly does gyda ni fel cynghorwyr ddim gobeth na gwes. Ond os newch chi fod mor garedig a wrach rhoi'r rhestr ohonyn nhw a beth yw hystyr nhw. Diolch am hynny beth bynnag. Ond y cwestiwn ydy, a oes ysgolion wedi cael rhai rhieni yn dod â'r plant i ysgol nad ydynt ar y pryd yn gweithio fel gweithwyr hanfodol?
Mae'r cwestiwn, digon teg efo'r jargon, Meirig, dwi'n siŵr yn ei sortio hwnna. Trauma, i gymaru ar lockdown cynta, sut ydych chi'n gwybod pwy sydd yn key worker neu ddim, mae lawr i'r ysgol ei hun trauma, lle oedd o ddim tro dwytha. So mae'r gwaith hynny'n cael ei wneud y fesul pob ysgol. A dyn ni wedi bod yn ffodus yn Sir Ddinbych, dyn ni wedi cael gormod o broblemau. I gymaru a dwi wedi siarad efo siroedd eraill sydd wedi cael lot o broblemau. Ond be dyn ni wedi ffindio ydy, ewch i'r list key workers yna. And mewn Saesneg, if you're in hospitality, you're not on the list, ond mae pawb arall ar y list. Then y reality bron iawn. Mae'r list mor agored tro yma. Ac oedd y list lot cilach tro dwytha. So mae o'n anodd i'r ysgolion beidio derbyn rhai oherwydd maen nhw ar y rhestr. Ond be di'r neges yn Sir Ddinbych ydy, os mae'n rieni'n gweithio adre, os mae gennych chi brodyr neu chwiorydd hun sydd adre, ac yn digon oed i edrych ar ôl plant, aros adre. Oherwydd mae'n saffach ar y funud i blant bod adre a nawn ni gefnogi chi efo addysg, ond y bwriad yn Sir Ddinbych, os ydych chi ddim yn key worker, aros adre, ond os ydych chi yn, mae'r ysgolion ar agor i chi.
Diolch yn fawr, hapus mae hynna, Meirig. Diolch yn fawr, gwych, diolch yn fawr. Gai fwrw ymlaen i ddod ar eitem yma i derfyn nawr, os gwelwch yn dda. I'll read it in English. What are the recommendations? Scrutiny members are invited to discuss the details of this report and, if appropriate, to make recommendations how to improve the support available to learners and to identify any aspects of the recovery work which may benefit from detailed examination in the future. Well, dwi'n meddwl bod ni wedi rhoi dipyn o graffu. We have really scrutinised all this very well. And I second what David Williams said earlier. Diolch yn fawr iawn I ti, Hugh. Thank you, Hilditch Roberts. The strain on this and the pressure on you also has been fantastic. Diolch hefyd I aelodau o'r GWE. GWE is the, what can we call it? It covers all of North Wales as far as education is concerned, and they work together with every county. And I think we should thank you, Mair, thank you, Jackie, and thank you all who have been involved. I'm going to ask someone to propose that we are happy with what we've done today. Can someone propose, please? Martin, diolch yn fawr, Martin. Can someone second?
No, second. Go on.
Hugh Irving, sorry, Peter. Hugh Irving has seconded. We all agreed that this has been a very good work we've done today, and we have pressurised poor Hugh Hilditch and others very well indeed. Diolch yn fawr I chi. Diolch yn fawr. Before we move on, I would like a proposal also that I, as the chair of this committee, send a letter of thanks to all schools, all head teachers and staff, and every staff that are involved in schools, that we as a committee are very grateful to all the work that they have done during COVID and still doing. I propose that. Can someone second it, please? Thank you, Hugh. And can we all agree that, please? Diolch yn fawr iawn. Felly, rwan, dwi am ofyn am tipyn bach o gyfle I ni gael rhoi deigrin bach dros Gymru, I fi cael gweld y tŷ bach. Os gwelwch yn dda, back in 10 minutes, please. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. Diolch.
if I can just ask you a question.
Yes.
Well, when you were a teacher, or you were a head teacher, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you work with GWE?
No, they came to, I retired in the year 2008.
Yeah.
They weren't in position till about 2014.
No, I remember them coming to presentation when they started. Yes, you're right. But they must have followed on from something else, mustn't they?
Yeah. Perhaps Neil knows more than I do, because you're busy with me, Neil, aren't you? Yes.
Yeah, they came. They came into about 2009, 10. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, what happened was the school standards element of the local authority.
But what are they doing? What are they doing that we couldn't be doing, or Welsh Government couldn't be doing?
We've got to restart the meeting. We're live.
Okay, no, it's okay. That's fine.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Very interesting discussion.
We'll talk again.
Send an email to Hugh Hildy, she'll answer you.
I've already planned to do that.
Well, diolch yn fawr. Ydy pawb wedi cyrraedd yn ôl rwan? Are you all back with us? We got officers involved instead of Geraint, James Curran, croeso, Ian Land, and Hugh Hildy's still here. He's had a very busy morning. Wedi cael bore prysur iawn. Ag da ni'n mynd mlaen felly i'r eitem nesa. Ydy pawb yma, da chi'n meddwl, swyddogion? Are they all here? Are they all joined us? Gyda ni un newydd wedi cyrraedd, Cynghorydd Mabon ap Gwynfor, Kathleen yma. Diolch yn fawr. Wel, dwi am gychwyn felly i'r eitem 6 sydd ger yn bron ni. Na i ddarllen hwn yn Saesneg. Y rheswm da ni yma to provide an overview of school transport requirements as they apply to Welsh language schools under the Learner Travel Wales measure, which is incorporated in the authority's own transport policy 2018. To provide an overview of the Welsh language categorisation of schools and how this applies to school transport. Felly mae ddwy elfen i hyn. Felly gawn ni pyn bach o eglurhad, dwi'n credu gan un ai swyddogion neu gan Hugh Hildy.
Yeah, na i ddechrau, diolch. I wish I was covering plastics, because that only lasted half an hour. To be honest with you, this paper comes a little prematurely to the committee, maybe, because for those of us who have been on the council for a few years now, we've seen the learner transport policy come every year almost, I think, to scrutiny in some guys. The situation is that we are currently still working the new policy from 2018, where we probably had maybe a couple of contentious issues, but we've dealt with them individually and made sure that everybody has no pupils have suffered. As it currently stands, it's free transport for those provided who live over 2 miles from their nearest suitable primary school, and for the secondary school it's over 3 miles, and everything is sort of as was last year and the year before that we've been to the committee. The biggest fundamental change that's coming is that there is currently 2 consultations out with Welsh Government on the school transport policy and the recategorisations of schools. And we as Denbighshire, on the language side, the WESP has responded, and we have submitted the consultation into Welsh Government, and obviously we, as from Transport, we are doing the same. I personally, we have to wait to see what the outcomes of these consultations are and what the policies are, because I believe that there is, especially on the language side, there'll be some massive implications on some of how we deliver Welsh language in some of our schools if they decide to make extreme changes. And one of those potential changes could be, for example, is taking the Category 2 school out. So you take Bryn Hyfryd, you take Dinas Bran, and they would have to either decide to deliver one way or the other. And that potentially for me is a real concern, because they are delivering a bilingual offer, if you like, now, which is one of Category 2, and one of category 1 in the same building, but the funding formula may change if they change the category. So that's something we've got to be very wary of going forward. So ideally for me, happy to take them through the questions, but I think the position we need to be in is when the consultation is over, that we call that into scrutiny and that we go through it as councillors then and see what that is and how we tear that apart and how it works for Denbighshire. I think that would be more fundamental for us going forward. But happy to take questions as usual.
Hugh, oes unrhyw un o swyddogion yn sydyn mewn? Na, dwi'n meddwl ar hyn o bryd. James or Ian Land? No, dim ar hyn o bryd. Oes na rhyw gwestiwn gan unrhyw un o'r Pwyllgor I ddechrau? Diolch yn fawr iawn. Gai pyn bach o eglurhad I chi. Mi gefais I neges gan un o rieni sydd yn anfon I plant, yn gobeithio anfon I plant I Ysgol Glan Clwyd, ac maen nhw'n byw yn ardal Llanrhaeadr, ac mae ganddyn nhw hawl yn ei barn nhw I cael addysg gyfan gwbl drwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Felly mae Ysgol Bro Crymmerch wrth gwrs yn ysgol gyfrwng Cymraeg, ac mae yna draddodiad bod plant yn gallu mynd o fan yno I Ysgol Glan Clwyd. Ar hyn o bryd, yr unig ddewis sydd ganddyn nhw ydy talu am gludiant I hunain, neu mynd I Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd. Felly, dyna pam mae hwn wedi dod ger ymbroni, ac mae Hugh yn iawn, mae yna ddau adroddiad yn dod allan gan Llywodraeth Cymru, a dwi'n meddwl dyn enw Lee Walters, sydd wedi bod tu ôl I hyn, sydd yn gweithio sydd yn aelod o'r Senedd. Yn ôl am hyn, ydy hynna'n iawn, Hugh?
Yndi, iawn, yndi. A mae nhw'n dod allan, dwi'n meddwl, mis nesa, mis Mawrth, dwi'n meddwl, ie.
Oes yna rhywun sydd yn aelod o'r Pwyllgor hyn swyddogol eisiau gofyn cwestiwn? Wel, ai neb. Mae yna Martin. Mae Martin eisiau gofyn cwestiwn. Diolch, Martin.
I have flagged up on the electric hands up, so and I think there are a couple of other people there well, but anyway, it's just overall I've read through the policy again, and I probably have somebody from every one of the categories that we have, because I'm a rural ward. I'm on the border with Flintshire and with Wrexham, and so I have pupils who are travelling into Flintshire. So overall, having read this again, I think it's in many ways just a case of rubber stamping this. But I have just a couple of quick questions. I've had some instances recently where people have moved into the ward, into Denbighshire, from Flintshire, for example, and then they've asked that their children still remain at the schools in Flintshire where they were, where before they moved. I can see the logic in some ways. It's nice not to move children during their education, but of course that puts quite a burden on us because we're having to consider providing school transport for them. And also just the one that always I have a question over is this dual residency. And I understand again, there's situations where families break up, that there's a need for, sometimes for the children to stay with one parent and then another. But am I right in saying that actually they have to have a prime residence, and that's the residence that they actually get the school transport support from?
I'll come back. I'll come on the first question, and I think Ian Lang's here. Yeah, I think.
Yes, I can assist with that one, Hugh.
Diolch, Hugh.
But on the first one, and maybe this is my thought process, and maybe if I'm wrong, Ian will correct me as well. But if I decided to move to, let's just say, Wrexham tomorrow, and I wanted my child to continue their education in Ysgol Penbarras in Rhythyn, I believe that unless that is the nearest suitable school for my child, it is my parental choice, and I would have to take the responsibility of taking that child to school. It's not a local authority burden. We would only fund if it is the most suitable school for that child and that they qualify under the learner transport policy. Am I right, Ian?
You are correct there, Hugh. Yeah.
Oh, see, I have read it at some point. So that is parental choice. So for example, if they move from Flint into Llanarmon, Martin, and they want to remain in Flint, that would be up to them. But if that school in Flint was the only suitable school for them, yes, we would have to fund them the same as we would any other child. And do you want to come back on the second point, Ian, please?
Yeah, just further to add to the first point, Hugh, if I may, please. Martin, for any of those who don't fall within the eligibility criteria, we do signpost them to other methods, because some of the public service providers out there provide things like scholar passes, which are at a reduced cost. So we do signpost them to other options where they're not eligible, so they can continue with their education at their current school. But as Hugh's mentioned there, it does come down to parental responsibility, and the legislation is quite clear on that element. On the second point, under dual residency, you're quite right, and this is an issue the authority come up against quite a number of times, is that you are supposed to have a defined home location where they're defined to be ordinarily resident. Now, when you have a dual residency situation with families very sadly splitting up, then quite often both of them wish to vie for that property to become the de facto home residence. At the moment, the authority usually recognises the home residence to be where the child benefit is paid in regards to that pupil. However, I can add that in regards to one of the consultations which is mentioned in the paper, the one regarding the learner travel measure, Welsh Government have asked a number of questions around this area of local authorities, and we've responded accordingly, highlighting some of the issues that we've come across regarding dual residency previously. So it is on Welsh Government's radar in terms of how they define home for pupils. And we've responded accordingly to highlight any issues that we've come across previously. I hope that's answered the question.
You're happy with that, Martin? Diolch yn fawr. Unrhyw un arall o'r Pwyllgor angen nôl at dwi'n symud ymlaen i'r rhan tu allan i'r Pwyllgor wan, a mi gychwynna i hefo'r cynghorydd Mabon ap Gwynfor, os gwelwch yn dda.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Gadeirydd. Diolch am fy ngadael i ymuno'r cyfarfod a chymryd rhan. Dda clywed fod y Llywodraeth yn edrych ar hyn, ac fel ar i'r cynghorydd Hildy Roberts deud, wrach fod elfennau o hyn ychydig yn gynamserol, ond mae'n rhaid i ni gofio hefyd fod yna ddisgyblion sydd yn astudio rwan hyn, sydd yn edrych i fynd ymlaen i ysgol uwchradd ac sydd yn cael ei effeithio, ac mae'n rhaid i ni gadw nhw mewn co, ac felly meddwl beth sydd orau iddyn nhw. Ac ddari'r cadeirydd gyfeirio at ddisgyblion yn ysgol Brocymyrch, sydd yn gylch naturiol traddodiadol i ysgol Glan Clwyd, a disgyblion o Gymyrch wedi mynd, ysgol Brocymyrch wedi mynd i Glan Clwyd, ond bellach yn cael ei gyrru i Bryn Hyfryd. A maen nhw'n cael ei gyrru Bryn Hyfryd ar sail fod y ddarpariaeth addysg yno yn Gymraeg, mae'n debyg. Ond dewis y disgyblion yn Brocymyrch a i rhieni nhw ydy fod y plant yn cael addysg gyfan gwbl cyfrwng Gymraeg. Wan, mae o'n dod lawr wedyn i beth yw'r diffiniad o cyfan gwbl. Fysa unrhyw un yn defnyddio synwyr cyffredin yn dweud mae cyfan gwbl ydy 100% addysg cyfrwng Gymraeg. Ond mae papurau Sir Ddinbych a polisi Sir Ddinbych yn dweud mae 80% ydy'r diffiniad o addysg Gymraeg. Ac ar bapur felly, fod Bryn Hyfryd yn cyrraedd y trothwy yna, ac felly mae Sir Ddinbych yn cynnig trafnidiaeth am ddim o Frocymyrch, i ddisgyblion ardal Brocymyrch, i fynd lawr i Bryn Hyfryd. Ond yn anffodus, hynny yw, dydy 80% ddim yn ddarpariaeth cyfrwng Cymraeg llawn yn un peth, dyna'r pwynt cyntaf, ac ar sail hynny, felly dwi'n meddwl dylid ystyried rhoi trafnidiaeth am ddim i ddisgyblion o Brocymyrch sydd eisiau mynd i Glan Clwyd am ddim, ar sail y ffaith mae dewis nhw wedi addysg Cymraeg, ond fel ddudais i ar bapur mae'n 80%, pan fod disgybl yn mynd i'r ysgol, wrach i fod nhw'n cael y syniad yma am Bryn Hyfryd bod addysg cyfrwng Cymraeg 80% o'r amser, ond y gwir ydy, erbyn bod nhw'n cyrraedd blwyddyn 9, ac yn dewis I pynciau ar gyfer tygau, yn amlach na pheidio dydy'r pynciau yna ddim ar gael trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Enghraifft, yn 2019, roedd celf a dylunio, busnes, cyfrifiadureg, bwyd y maeth, addysg corfforol, gofal anifeiliaid, iechyd a gofal cymdeithasol, oll yn bynciau oedd dim ond ar gael trwy gyfrwng y Saesneg. Yn ôl rhieni'r cyfnod yna, dim ond 6 pwnc oedd ar gael trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg I ddisgyblion oedd yn dymuno addysg Gymraeg ym Mhrynhyfryd yn 2019. Felly dydy hynna ddim ar unrhyw gyfri, ddim hyd yn oed ar y trothwy 80% yn cynnig darpariaeth addysg Gymraeg. A mae'r plant yma wedi cyrraedd yr ysgol ym mlwyddyn 7 ar y dealltwriaeth bod nhw'n cael addysg Gymraeg, ond wrth bod nhw'n ymlaen I wneud tygau, maen nhw'n gorfod dewis Saesneg neu yn cael ei gorfodi I adael I ffrindiau I fynd I ysgol arall I gael tygau trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg. Dydy hynna ddim yn deg, dydy o ddim yn iawn ar unrhyw lefel, dydy o ddim yn ddarpariaeth cyfrwng Gymraeg, a mae rhaid meddwl am anghenion y plant yma, hyn maen nhw isio. Rwan hefyd, fydd rhai yn dadlau, a dwi'n gwybod fod yna rai o fewn yr awdurdod wedi dadlau yn y gorffennol, fod rhai disgyblion cyfrwng Cymraeg yn dewis pynciau cyfrwng Saesneg. Mae hynna yn wir ym Mhrynhyfryd. Ond ystyriwch pam, os ydy'r rheliw I ffrindiau nhw yn dewis pwnc cyfrwng Saesneg, a fod pwnc maen nhw'n dymuno I wneud trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg ddim yn cael ei gynnig, yna naturiol maen nhw am ddewis pwnc cyfrwng Saesneg. Oherwydd dyna lle mae cyfeillio nhw I cyfoedio nhw hefyd yn mynd. Felly dyna pam dwi'n meddwl, tan bod ni'n cael yr adroddiad yma efo Llywodraeth Cymru I fewn I categoreiddio ysgolion a trafnidiaeth i'r ysgolion, yn y cyfamser, mae rhaid I ni feddwl am y cohort o blant yma sydd yn dymuno addysg Gymraeg, ac felly yn yr achos yma, yr unigolyn, na I ddim I henwyddio, ond yr unigolyn yma, enghraifft sydd yn mynychu Brwc y Myrch, bod hi yn cael trafnidiaeth am ddim i'r addysg Gymraeg agosa iddi hi, sef Ysgol Glan Clwyd.
Dwi'n dod nôl I ateb hwnna.
Diolch Mabon. Fel y clido, mae'r trafodaeth yma'n digwydd pob blwyddyn hefyd. A fel cyn ddisgybl yn ysgol Brwc y Myrch yn hun, ag yn rhiant yn ysgol Brynhyfryd ar y funud hefyd. A lle mae mab I yn cael addysg trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. A mae o ddim di dewis, mae o'n blwyddyn 10 a mae'n gwneud pob pwnc trwy Gymraeg yn blwyddyn 10 hefyd. A be dwi isio wneud hwn yn glir, di hwn ddim am damsafonau Brynhyfryd dros Glan Clwyd, mae hwn am dewis y plant a addysg gyfrwng Gymraeg. Dwi'n credu, and I just try Saesneg, dwi'n mynd I siarad I Ian, and I do believe Ian, that when we have raised this before, and I remember attending a meeting with Karen Evans on this, where the difficulty is where the school is located in Llanrhaeadr, is that people will live either side of the school. So if you go to Llanrhaeadr school, but you live Ruthin side, under the school, the learner transport policy, you will then be directed to Brynhyfryd as the nearest suitable school. Because in the eyes of the learner transport, 80% in category 2 is Welsh Government guidelines, not Denbighshire's. The Brynhyfryd are meeting that, so therefore it matches with the policy. So this is, again, when I said at the beginning, what the new policy and the categorization, transport policy and the categorizations of schools really need to consult each other so that it stacks up that we're not in this situation in the future. Now, the last time this row cropped up, we actually granted those children the opportunity to attend Ysgol Glan Clwyd, didn't we, Ian? And we actually funded that. Is that right?
No, some of those did travel on concession receipts, Hugh, which were available at that time. However, there is a restriction presently in place in regards to public sector vehicle regulations on the authority being able to offer any further concessions for transport on council services.
So it was concessionary bus passes that we allowed them to have, yeah?
Yes, in some instances they were paying for a vacant seat on a council service at that time. However, as I mentioned, we're no longer able to do that due to legislative restrictions across the whole of the UK, not just in Wales, relating to public service buses and being able to sell seats on those services that the council is running.
Okay, so just talk to me for a second, Ian. Then is that if I am the parent of this child,
yeah,
and on paper there is an 80% offer,
yes,
in Bryn Hyfryd, which potentially would mean that if I wanted to do CDT and home economics in Welsh in year 10, but it wasn't available on the curriculum because it was part of the 20% that wasn't run because of the budget.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to, Babon, basically, is the budget of the school. That's why they have to reduce the curriculum. The only way that I could get my child to Ysgol Glan-Clwyd now, if I lived the Rhythin side of Llanrhaeadr, would be by paying for it myself or taking them myself.
That is correct. Obviously, in regard, as you mentioned previously, Hugh, for the purposes of the assessment process, the schools, albeit the dual stream, the Welsh side and Glan-Clwyd, would be considered the same in that context.
Yeah.
Therefore, with Broughimach also being part of Bryn Hyfryd's cluster,
yeah,
you know, if that's the nearest suitable school, they would get transport there. But conversely, if another family happened to live on the other side and Glan-Clwyd does become the nearest suitable school, this is all about the fact that the legislation is driven by the calculation of distance from a home location. And in any situation where you've got that, you're going to have a situation where you have those who get transport and those who don't. And that's not just in relation to Welsh medium education. That's also in relation to English medium schools. So it's a problem parents will experience regardless of you know, the medium which they're having their son or daughter taught in.
Okay, so let's turn it on its head for a second then. Sorry, I don't mean to be doing the scrutiny. I'm just trying to understand it so we all understand it clearly. So if my child goes to Llanrhaeadr school, and I live in let's just say the Denbigh side of Llanrhaeadr,
yes,
and I want an English education, my nearest suitable school for transport would be Denbigh High, wouldn't it?
It could possibly be, yes. Obviously, again, this is calculated on an individual basis.
Yeah, if I live near Brookhouse Mill, for example, most people know where Brookhouse Mill is, don't you? Yeah. You know, so if you live there, so therefore, but I'm in a Bryn Hyfryd cluster school, which is Broughimach, but if I wanted transport, it was to go to Denbigh High, yeah?
No, there is another, in terms of the fact that Bryn Hyfryd, obviously, when we developed the policy, we had a number of situations of which Martin will understand what I'm talking about here, whereby you have some who are attending our feeder schools for a particular secondary who could not attend the secondary school because it wasn't the nearest, and they were there and they were part of that cluster, and the transition work was happening with that school. So what happened when we developed the policy, and again, this all went through scrutiny and the explanation provided to scrutiny at that time, we developed the feeder school relationship. So if you'd been attending Ysgol Broughimach and it was your nearest suitable Welsh language primary school at that point of admission, you were technically eligible for transport to Bryn Hyfryd because of the feeder relationship. So you mentioned there, Hugh, about English language. You know, if you wanted English or Welsh, we do have to consider both aspects. But because Broughimach is part of the cluster for Bryn Hyfryd, there is another element which comes in, and that's the feeder relationship between Broughimach and Bryn Hyfryd itself, which we have to take into account. That was built in to allow students and pupils to stay with a particular cohort within their cluster.
Diolch yn fawr. Dim I hyn fod yn sgwrs rhwng Hugh Hilditch a Ian Land yn gyfan gwbl. Diolch yn fawr. Ond beth sydd yn bwysig yma hefyd, mae Sir Ddinbych sy'n gosod y polisi ar gyfer cludiant I ddysgwyr. Felly gobeithio bydd y polisi yma yn cael ei newid yn fuan bod pobl sydd yn dymuno cael ei addysg yn llawn drwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg yn cael ystyriaeth gwell na sydd gennym ni rwan. Mewn nid yn unig yn ysgol y Bro Cymyrch, ond mae yna ysgolion eraill hefyd ar darllan gollen er enghraifft. Y gai fynd ymlaen nawr te, Chorydd Emrys Wyn.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Mae bon eisoes wedi cyfeirio at y problemau sydd wedi cael eu cyfeirio at yna hefyd. Y broblem ydy dewis yr rhieni rhwng categori 1 a categori 2. Dydy'r dewis hwnnw ddim ar gael ar hyn o bryd o'r ysgol Bro Cymraeg, yr ysgol sydd wedi cael ei ddewis, sydd wedi cael ei enwi yma heddiw. Ac mae'n bechod achos mae'n rhieni eisiau addysg cyfan gwbl drwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Ac o ran diffiniad ni yn y bryd, mae hwnnw ar gael o ysgol categori 1. A fi'n gofyn yn garedig, a dyna'r unig ffordd dwi'n gallu rhoi cwestiwn i mewn iddo fo, ar ei gyngor sydd ddim bych barhau i ddiwallu anghenion yr rhieni hynny sy'n dymuno addysg categori 1 i'w disgyblion. Mae yna bethau wedi cael ei rannu, wybodaeth wedi cael ei rannu am y darpariaeth yn ysgol Bryn Hyfryd. Mae gen i un wybodaeth wedi dderbyn hefyd. Dyn nhw'n wastad yn cyd-fynd ar hyn sydd wedi cael ei rannu yma heddiw, a dwi'n meddwl bod rhaid i ni gadarnhau beth yn union ydy'r darpariaeth sydd ar gael drwy ar gyfer addysg Gymraeg, cyfrwng Gymraeg yn ysgol Bryn Hyfryd hefyd.
Emrys, am hynna, hwnna'n bwynt rhagorol. Mae yna un person o tu allan i'r Pwyllgor eto eisiau ei gair, sef y Cynghorydd Mary Lloyd Davies. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr eto, Mr Cadeirydd. Dwi yn teimlo yn cydweld yn llwyr ynglyn â ysgol Cymrych, Cariad ar Nghymrych. Ddaru ni godi ond o rhai blynyddoedd yn ôl, a da ni'n dal wrth i. O'i'n land yn sôn hefyd am y trafnidiaeth, gan o ddim, os dwi'n dall yn iawn, hyd yn oed os yna'n mynd â nhw i Ddimbych, fynd ar y bws i Glan-Clwyd, sydd yn edrych yn od i mi, os ydy'r rhieni'n barod i gludo'r plentyn neu'r plant i Ddimbych i ddal y bws. Dwi'n meddwl bod ysgol Pampers Dynog yn gwneud hynny. Dwi'n yn siŵr, ydych chi wedi newid pethau. Mae'n bwysig yn dydy bod, os ydy'r Llywodraeth eisiau siaradwyr Cymraeg, mae yna rhyw ffigwr gynnyn nhw, mae'n bwysig bod ni'n neud o'n hwylus i blant gael y Gymraeg ym mhob agwedd o addysg. Ac oedd y Cynghorydd Huw Hildrich Roberts yn sôn am ymateb i'r Llywodraeth. Os ni'n dymuno copi o'r ymateb, os gwelwch yn dda, i ni gael deall be ydy'r ymholiad gan nhw.
Diolch, Mary. Did you understand that?
May I come back in there?
Yeah, please.
If that's possible, please. Just in regards to the consultation, I can happily share with you what we put in that particular element, but we have, as an authority, made it very clear that we would expect Welsh Government to have a very close connection between the new categorisation system, which they're also consulting on, and linking that to transport. And we said there needs to be a very clear connection between those two things, and you would expect those two policies, when they change, to dovetail together. So it's very clear for parents and for authorities alike as to the basis upon which transport is given, and that should be linked to categorisation in the Welsh medium instance. Hope that's helped.
Diolch yn fawr, Ian.
Ian, can I ask a question to Ian? Imagine there's a brother and a sister in the same family, and one has already, he attends Ysgol Glan-Clwyd, and his sister would like to follow him. But now this policy would stop that. How is the county answering that?
In terms of the current policy, I'd firstly say that I have the utmost confidence that the policy that we have in place for transport within Denbighshire presently meets, from a legal perspective, everything we're required to do under the legislation and the measure. For that example you mentioned there, obviously, if a sister or a brother had gone to the school previously and they were from the same home location, obviously their basis of transport would have been calculated on the same for the sibling as it would be for the new progression to year 7, for example. So if they had been provided with transport previously, it would follow that they are meeting the eligibility criteria as per section 3.3, and we would provide transport for the sibling. If they hadn't, then obviously we wouldn't be providing transport. The only exception to that, Chair, is that I mentioned there about previously some concessions had been permitted from that area, but the parents then paid for those concessions, and unfortunately the local authority, due to the regulatory change, is no longer able to offer those concession receipts.
Okay, there is, I suppose, a bus that goes from Ysgol Twmanant, the children who have been in Ysgol Twmanant from Denby, and they are given transport to go to Ysgol Glan-Clwyd. Isn't it possible for a little minibus to be provided to go from Ysgol Bro Cymerch to join that bigger bus?
If that was a service that the school themselves were starting and working with passenger transport, and it was being charged then to the parents, that is something completely separate from what we're discussing here in terms of the policy. I'd say that to do anything other than check eligibility against what we have in the policy presently could possibly open up the authority to challenge in a number of areas, because it could come down to, you know, decisions on being looked at on a quality basis. And as I said, I've got the utmost confidence presently that the policy that we have in place, which has been legally tested, meets the full requirement of the duty. What I would say is that we seem to be in a situation presently where we've got 2 consultations running, which are going to impact legislation in these areas. And as Hugh mentioned at the outset, it seems a little premature to kind of consider any options at the moment, but we have made it clear to Welsh Government via the consultation of the issues that we experience around this area, and I'm hoping that they will understand from us and others as to the implications of that and adjust the legislation, perhaps you know, to match the categorisation.
Diolch yn fawr. Mae Cynghorydd Mabon a Gwynfor eisiau dod nôl.
Diolch, Gadeirydd. Os gai ategu'r hyn ar i'r cynghorydd Hilditch Roberts deud ar y dechrau gyda llaw, mae Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd yn darparu'r addysg o'r posib. Mae addysg Bryn Hyfryd yn rhagorol, mae gennau deulu yna, nid trafod hynny ydyn ni. Mae'r drafodaeth hyd yma wedi bod yn ddifyr iawn, ond wedi methu ar un o'r pwyntiau sylfaenol ddaru fi gyflwyno, sef yn ôl y polisi sydd gynnon ni ar y foment, mae addysg, mae trafnidiaeth am ddim yn cael ei ddarparu i blant sydd yn dymuno derbyn addysg cyfrwng Gymraeg. Ac ar bapur, 80% ydy hynna, ac ar bapur mae Bryn Hyfryd yn darparu hynny. Ond does dim sicrwydd i blentyn sydd yn mynd mewn i flwyddyn 7 y bydd y plentyn hwnnw yn derbyn o leia 80% o'i addysg trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg wrth bod y plentyn yna yn mynd trwy flynyddoedd yr ysgol. Felly'n seiliedig ar hynny, nad oes sicrwydd fod darpariaeth o 80%, a gallwch chi ddim rhoi sicrwydd hynny, achos mae'r penderfyniad yn fympwyol yn cael ei wneud o flwyddyn i flwyddyn yn dibynnu faint o blant sy'n dewis pa bwnc ac os oes athro cyfrwng Cymraeg ar gael neu peidio, oherwydd yr ansicrwydd yna sydd yn y system, yna does dim modd dweud fod Bryn Hyfryd yn medru darparu addysg 80% neu fwy, ac felly y dylid, tan bod y polisi newydd, tan bod Llywodraeth Cymru'n dod â unrhyw bolisi newydd ymlaen, y dylid darparu trafnidiaeth am ddim i blant, enghraifft Ysgol Bro Cymerch, i fynd i Ysgol Glan-Clwyd, lle mae yna sicrwydd i bod nhw'n mynd i cael addysg gyfrwng Gymraeg. Dyna di byrdwn a prif sail yr hyn dwi'n i drafod efo chi bore yma.
Nôl i fanna. Ian, wel na, yn ochr o teg. James, na, Hugh, Hilditch?
Dwi ddim yn anghytuno fo ti Mabon, yn du a gwyn, dyna beth di ond de. Ond, be dwi'n yr unig opsiwn arall, sydd wedi cael ei gynnig yn y flynyddoedd cynt, ydy i ysgol Bro Cymech newid clwster. Ac os nhw'n muno o clwster Glan Clwyd, bys nhw yn ffid y sgwl i Glan Clwyd. Ond be dwi'n mynd dadlu efo ti, ond dwi'n jyst yn trio rhesymu'r ochr arall ar y funud, ydy mae gen ti ysgolion fel Carreg Emlyn, Ysgol Penbaras, efo safonau andros o dda yn y Gymraeg, a plant nhw i gyd yn mynd i Bryn Hyfryd. Ond falle bod ar bapur bod o ddim yn 100%, ond dwi efo hyder ar ran yr ysgol Bryn Hyfryd, lle fedrwn nhw, maen nhw yn trio darparu trwy'r Gymraeg. Dyn ni lawr i cyllid yn dren, ac heblaw bod yr ail categori o'r ysgolion yma wwan yn dod blwyddyn yma, dwi'n meddwl mae rhaid nhw benderfynu un ffordd neu llall. Cos 80% ar bapur ddim byd na chdi. Wyt ti fewn neu wyt ti ddim yn fewn. Mae hwn yr un dadl a ysgolion cynradd categori 2, lle wyt ti'n cael dewis Saesneg neu Cymraeg. Be di hynny, ti'n cael dewis y ffordd wyt ti'n cael ei asesu. Ddim ysgol bilingual, fel mae pawb yn deud, cos wyt ti'n dewis yr uniaith Saesneg neu ti'n dewis yr uniaith Gymraeg. I fi, categori 1, di'r ysgol dwyieithog. Oherwydd maen nhw'n siarad Saesneg, cael dysgu Saesneg, a maen nhw'n cael y addysg Gymraeg. So mae hwnna'n dadl arall, pa'n dechrau fi ar hwnna. Ond, mae'n dwylo ni mewn ffordd i clymu i rhywfaint. Mae hwn wedi bod yn gweithio yn llwyddiannus i raddau dros y blynyddoedd. Dwi'n meddwl oedd o 80% pen o'n i yn pen o'n i'n Bryn Hyfryd unwaith. So dwi'n meddwl bod wedi newid llawer. Ond yr unig ffordd ydy, os mae'r plant yma yn syrthio tu allan i'r polisi, dwi digon parod, oherwydd bod yn edrych y polisi yn newid yn y dyfodol yn tybio, bod ni'n edrych ar hein yn unigol a cael sgwrs efo'r teuluoedd. Dyna bys ni'n awgrymu. Dwi'n siŵr fod i yn mynd i gytuno fi, dwi'n gobeithio.
Diolch ti Hugh am hynna. Ga i ddod â Eli mewn rwan. Mae hi'n aelod o'r Pwyllgor Swyddogol. Croeso Eli eto.
Okay. Prynhanda, my question is, I mean, I've got lots of stories about bus transport, having worked in a school for many years. Are there pupil spaces in Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd for the extra pupils requiring the 80% Welsh and 20 Saesneg education? That's my question, because I'm concerned now about Ysgol Glan Clwyd. If they're, thinking, oh yes, that little family will be coming along and what have you. So that's a question. Okay.
Okay, diolch. Os dwi'n eisiau dod mewn, Emrys, o'n i'n gweld bod ti dyr lywodraethwr yn Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd.
Yn hollol, ga i jyst gywiro beth sy'n newydd cael ei ddeud rwan. Na, Ysgol Bryn Hyfryd, dyn nhw ddim yn dysgu 80% yn Gymraeg ac 20% yn Saesneg. Mae o'n 100% yn Saesneg a mae o'n 80% i fod yn y Gymraeg. Mae hynny'n bwysig iawn bod hynny'n glir. Ond, ga i dim ond... Mae'r busnes 80% yn peri problem. Dwi wedi bod yn siarad bore yma gyda'r cadeirydd y llywodraethwyr ac mae'r cadeirydd wedi sicrhau i bod cyfnod 3 a 4 mae 80% ydy'r ddarpariaeth ar gyfer cyfrwng y Gymraeg, bod nhw'n gweithio tuag at hynny yn y 6 dosbarth hefyd. Dyna pan fi wedi cynnig cynt, y dylen ni fod yn cynnal arolwg sydyn i gadarnhau y ffigurau yma. Achos wrth gwrs, mae'r ffigurau, dydyn ni'n cael gwybodaeth ar wahân, mae map yna fi'n wedi derbyn gwybodaeth gwahanol hefyd o lefydd eraill. Di pawb ddim, does neb yn trio yn twyllio ni yma, eisiau gwybod beth yw'r gwirionedd yda ni'n y pen draw. Ac mae'n bwysig bod ni'n gwneud hynny. Bron iawn, sy'n ni'n hoffi gweld y Pwyllgor yma'n rhoi dweud gadael tan iddo gael i'w godi mewn cyfarfod arall ar ôl i'r arolwg yma ddigwydd. Diolch yn fawr.
Dyna fydd yn bwriad yn sicr, Emrys. Martin, please. Can't hear you. Unmute, please.
Sorry, there we go. Finger trouble. We have a policy which I personally believe is quite flexible and has accommodated numerous issues in my ward. But why we continue to debate this at the moment when we know that there's something coming out of Welsh Government that may change all of this anyway? And surely we would be better now waiting for that, after that consultation, to hear what Welsh Government are going to say. It may solve some of the problems that you're raising today. On the other hand, it could create a lot more. Depends what comes out of that statement. But I think at this stage in the game, we have a policy that's very, very good, very firm, and it accommodates most people, certainly in my ward. And so why not just wait now until we hear from Welsh Government?
Are you proposing that, Martin? Yeah.
Yeah, I would propose that.
And Hugh has seconded that. Okay. Dyna ni, felly, we are waiting for Lee Waters to bring this as soon as possible from the Welsh Government regarding transport to the schools. And it is Denbighshire, I may say, Denbighshire which provides the policy of transport themselves. You do the policy, don't you, Ian? We are in charge of the policy, not the Welsh Government. And we would hopefully that these little matters, that when a child wants to go to a fully a school which teaches the medium Welsh, like Ysgol Glan-Clwyd or Ysgol Maes Garmon, which is in Flintshire, that they will provide this for us in the future. It's not the county's fault. We have tried our best, and but you must remember there's a little family there who want their children to have their education fully through the medium of Welsh. That's why it was brought here today. And I am feeling very, very sorry for the little family, y plant bach yna, sydd yn dymuno cael eu haddysg trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Felly, dwi'n eilio be mae Martin wedi gynnig ac wedi cael ei eilio gan Hugh Irving, bod ni yn gadael hwn am dipyn bach, but we will come back to it. But gai ofyn i Hugh Hildis Roberts hefyd i fynd i siarad hefo chei o rieni sydd yn gofyn am addysg gyfan gwbl drwy'r Gymraeg yn Ysgol Bro Cynmerch. Ydy hynna'n iawn efo chi, Hugh?
Yeah, no problem. Digon hapus, Arwel. Can I just add rhywbeth arall, Arwel, sy'n myndio?
Okay, Tad.
I just want to, I don't know if there's any press on this, but this piece of work isn't just about the Welsh language. It's really important. This is not Denbighshire neglecting the Welsh language. And I don't know if Emrys was correcting me. What I meant, if it was me, what I meant to say that it looks 80% Welsh and 20% English on paper. I know it doesn't happen. And as I said, my son does not have any subjects through the medium of English other than English language. But you know, but just in potential, just to put it into context, is that if a real high school offers a subject at year 10 that Denby High School doesn't offer, we wouldn't give them transport to go there. Are you with me? So this is a problem bigger than beyond just the Welsh language. So I just think we need to keep that into context, because you know, when it gets to year 10, you have, you know, maybe 15 subjects, but if only one child picks one of those subjects, it's not viable to run that course for that year. So I just want to put that into, and I don't want, you know, I didn't want, if the press were listening, that we were neglecting the Welsh language, because I think you all know that our investment in the Welsh language in education has been really good over the last few years, and Welsh language is growing in Denbighshire, so it's not neglect of that. So, as I said...
Yn cytuno'n yn hyderus efo ti, da ni'n deall bod na polisi cludiant nid yn unig am yr iaith Gymraeg ac i trosglwyddo i ysgolion cyfrwng i Cymraeg, ond mae broblemau eraill dwi'n deall hynny. Mae Emrys eisiau dod nôl.
Well, can I put your mind at rest, Hugh? No, I wasn't correcting you. The speaker before me was Ellie, and when I said what I said, Ellie's reaction, I could see that she realised exactly where I was coming from, and she accepted that correction as well. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Emrys.
Chyfawr iawn. Felly, da ni wedi cael dipyn o drafodaeth ynghylchyn. Mae o'n biti bod hwn yn blaen ni, ond o'r rhaid i ni gael hwn o flaen chi, oherwydd bod y deulu bach hyglyw yma eisiau cael ei addysg yn llawn drwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Dyna'i dymuniad nhw, a dyna ni ddim yn gallu ateb hwnna ar hyn o bryd. Os wneith Hugh Hildys edrych ar ei sefyllfa nhw, os yn bosibl, dwi'n ddiolchgar iawn i ti. Ac da ni'n edrych ymlaen i gweld beth yw eich ymateb chi at polisi cludiant yn sir yn gyfan gwbl. A fyswn ni'n cynnig yma heno, prawn ma, dim heno eto, yn bod ni yn anfon gair o'r pwyllgor yma at Lee Waters, yr un sydd yn pyn bach yn ar y deg yn dod â hyn i fyw gan Llywodraeth Cymru. Bod ni'n anfon ato fo i frysio, a bod ni'n poeni bod cludiant i ysgolion yn dioddau, yn wedig i'r rhai sy'n dymuno cael eu haddysg trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg. Dyna yng nghynnig i, a os oes rhywun yn fodlon eilio, os gwelwch yn dda. Fawr iawn. Ydyn ni'n gytun efo hynna, os gwelwch yn dda, bod ni'n rhoi pwysau ar un o seneddwyr lawr yn Nghaerdydd. Wel, dyna ni. Da i ddiolch yn fawr i Ian a Hugh Hildys Roberts. Dwi wedi cael bore bach digon caled, a dwi'n dymuno yn dda i ti, a diolch i ti am dy ymynedd a'r gwaith da ti'n neud dros i'r ddimbych yn enwedig ym myd addysg. Diolch yn fawr iawn i ti, Hugh.
Diolch i chi, braf fod nôl.
Da iawn. Da ni'n symud ymlaen rwan i'r agenda, ac da ni'n troi at un o swyddogion gorau sgennon ni yn Sir Ddibych yma, Rhian Evans, os gwelwch yn dda, i basio ymlaen Scrutiny Work Programme. Ga i ddiolch hefyd i Neil ac i Kathleen am ei cyfraniad heddiw. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi. Thank you very much.
Diolch am hwnna. Dyma'r adroddiad rhaglen waith arferol sgynnoch chi. Mae ar dudalen 255 o'r pecyn sgynnoch chi. O edrych ar y rhaglen waith, mae cysgod Covid mae gennau ofn dal dros bob dim eto. Mi oedd yna adroddiad i fod i gael ei gyflwyno i heddiw ar cefndir healthcare, ond mi dderbynwyd cais chydig wythnosau yn ôl ynglyn, achos yr adroddiad oedd i fod i ddod i chi oedd adroddiad blynyddol y cwmni am 2019-2020. Ond oherwydd Covid, maen nhw wedi methu cael o'n barod mewn pryd, a gan bod ni rwan yn chwarter ola'r flwyddyn ariannol yma, maen nhw'n gofyn gan ddod yr adroddiad am y 2 flynedd yma ato chi yr un pryd yn mis Mehefin. Mi ganiataodd y cadeirydd y cais yma, so felly mae hwnna rwan ar y rhaglen waith ar gyfer mis Mehefin. Mae'ch cyfarfod nesaf chi ar y 19 o Fawrth, ac o edrych ar y rhaglen waith, mi o'n 5 eitem sydd yn fwy na ydych chi arfer i gael ar gyfer y cyfarfod hwnnw. Dwi wedi gwneud chydig o ymoliadau. Mi oedd yna adroddiad ar hafan 10 yn rhyl i ddod o'ch blaenau chi, ond wrth gwrs, herwydd Covid, dydy hafan 10 ddim wedi bod yn agored. So ar hyn o bryd, fe nhw ddim dod â dim byd i chi ynglyn â hwnna, achos gwerthusiad oedd o'r gwasanaethau oedd ar gael yno, a sut oedden nhw yn trio ehangu'r dewis o bethau oedd ar fynd yno. Maen nhw'n gobeithio, dibynnol wrth gwrs ar beth sy'n digwydd yn y misoedd nesaf, mae i allu dod â hwnna i chi rwan yn mis Gorffennaf, os di hynny'n iawn efo chi.
Dwi'n siŵr bod ni'n cytuno. Diolch yn fawr.
Dwi wedi cael cadarnhad y bydd yr adroddiad ar y Commercial Waste Service Evaluation Plan, y bydd hwnna ar gael erbyn mis Mawrth, a hefyd yr un ar safonau llyfrgelloedd. A wedyn y ddau adroddiad arall ydy'r cynllun corfforaethol a'r gofrestr risg corfforaethol. Mae hynny fel busnes fel arfer, so fydd heina ar gael i chi. Yn atodiad 2, mae'r ffurflen gais a bynciau. Os oes rhywun yno chi a ffwnc da chi'n meddwl sy'n heiddi cael ei graffu arno, llenwch honna i fewn, anfonwch i ata i, a mi wneud y grŵp cadeiryddion i ystyried i. Mi ar nhw gyfarfod dydd Iau dwytha, do'n ddim pynciau gath ei rhoi ymlaen dydd Iau dwytha yn dod ymlaen i'r pwyllgor yma. Mae cyfarfod nesaf nhw ar yr 11 o Fawrth, dwi'n meddwl. Felly, os oes gynnwch chi unrhyw bwnc, llenwch i fewn ac anfonwch chi, a fydd hynny na nhw ystyried i. Yn atodiad 3, mae rhaglen waith y cabinet. Mae pynciau sgyn nhw'n dod i fyny yn y cyfarfodydd nesaf. A wedyn atodiad 4, mae'r diweddaraf ar argymhellion 2 gyfarfod dwytha da chi wedi cael. A fel y dydwyd yn gynharach, mi fydd argymhellion y cyfarfod arbennig neu'r ail ar 20 o Rhagfyr yn mynd i'r cyngor sir ar y 6 ar 20 o fis Chwefror. A'r unig beth arall ydy, ond ddogfen gwybodaeth i cael ei chylchrediad i chi dim Mawrth, oedd yn cynnwys yr diweddariad ar y cynllun corfforaethol am yr chwarter 1 a 2 oedd o. Jyst i chi fod mewn fel cefndir i chi ar gyfer y cyfarfod nesaf pan gewch chi drafod chwarter 3.
Rhian, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am y manylion yna. Felly, fyddwn ni'n cyfarfod eto ar y 19 o fis Mawrth, ac ga i ddiolch i bawb am ei ymunud heddiw. Does genna i ddim feedback from committee representatives i raddau i mi i ddeall. Dwi wedi bod yn SIG. I have been in SIG, but I think some of that is rather confidential, and keep quiet about that one. They discuss good things, so they do a lot of good work in the background. Felly, dyna ni. Da ni'n dod i ddiwedd y cyfarfod. Can I thank you again for all your patience. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd, and I think we've had a good meeting. And be careful. It was nice for me to travel to Ruthin for a change, but it's very, very, very odd to sit here and not seeing all of you in front, sitting down and having a good old chat beforehand. So diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd am bob dim, and be careful. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Diolch, Mr. Cadeirydd.
Diolch i chi.